In the cave settlement, a group of people gathered. The warrior encourages the priestess and the little girl to cooperate and urges the girl's father to intervene because of how they behave. Meanwhile, the young man sits at the computer and advises them to try their best, as he usually does. A story about how he did not become the god of fate saved several peasants, and then they saved him. A month ago, the unshaven young man was eating at his parents' house, and his mother asked if he had already found a job and said that his father would not be able to work forever. Although they are somehow managing now, she worries about his plans for the future if they are no longer there, and during the meal he puts down the spoon, bangs on the table in irritation, and rudely tells his mother to be quiet. She scolds him for inactivity, and he silently wants her to wait with reproaches until he eats, and regrets waking up so early. Suddenly he gets up, says he has lost his appetite, slams the door, and leaves the food untouched. He knows his behavior is bad. After school, he enrolled in and graduated from an ordinary college that accepted almost everyone, but the real difficulties appeared later. Even before finishing school, he was looking for a job, but all the companies he applied to refused. Over time, his ambition faded because the rejections increased, while his peers advanced in life. You missed this, and a whole decade has already passed since he graduated. Mother said that their acquaintances had advanced in life, but he still lived in his parents' house. He was already over 30, and he already felt that he was falling behind classmates with stable jobs and families. His thoughts freeze halfway up the stairs when the doorbell rings. Through Indracom, he sees a courier with a package on which he sees a strange logo and decides to open the door himself. Mother worries that he spent money he doesn't have, but he says it might be a prize he won. To avoid feeling guilty about being unemployed, he participates in all online giveaways he finds, sometimes winning items, including adult products, which he quickly grabs so his parents don't notice. Outside, he signs for the package, sees the courier's surprised expression, probably because the courier sees a man at home in the middle of the week, and notices that the neighbor's stares are becoming increasingly noticeable, which he has already gotten used to. When he takes the package, his mother makes a sharp remark. Alone in his room, he opens the box and sees an empty game disc labeled Village of Faith, and thinks it is an alpha version. And a note confirms that he was chosen to try a revolutionary game with realistic characters, the first of its kind. As the god of fate, he will lead the peasants daily, helping them build a community. Yashio learns the rules as he plays, considers such organization careless, and assumes it is a village-building game, while the note forbids sharing game details with others or posting them online. Threatening to cancel his access and take away the game if he does not comply, he was shocked that the company did not require a contract and is now interested in how they detect leaks on the internet. In the note, he is told to always play connected to the internet and warned that if his village is destroyed, he will no longer be able to play, and since the game saves automatically, it is impossible to return to a previous point. Yashio considers these rules strict and doubts whether they can be followed. Unsure whether to install it, he searches the internet but finds no traces of the game. Fearing viruses, he decides to run it on an old computer because he suspects it might be a bad game or a scam. Considering how much time he spends on games and the internet, Yashio reluctantly agrees to try the game and plans to share his impressions online if it turns out to be a trap. The game starts with a simple title screen that does not impress him. But when he presses enter, his eyes widen with excitement. He watches as a cart rushes through the forest in stunning graphics he has never seen before. A hardened, frightened warrior drives the cart. Friendly tries to escape from two monsters chasing him riding boars. Yashio notices how this medieval fantasy scene unfolds. The game shows a frightened family in a cart, trembling with fear, while the priestess clutches the Bible and prays to the god of fate for salvation. One monster cuts the side of the cart, forcing them to scream while the attack continues. Another monster rushes forward, and Yashio sees that it is attacking the horses. The warrior notices this and draws his sword, and deflects the creature's strike. But the second monster takes the opportunity and lunges at the horses. Until it hits, the priestess's Bible glows brightly, blinding the monsters and forcing them to retreat. Then the warrior checks the passengers. Everyone who smiles says they are safe. Seeing this, Yashio thinks that the game has officially started and does not know what to do next. When he clicks on the warrior, the character profile appears. I present the 26-year-old warrior monk Hams, the older brother of Kim, and the 19-year-old priestess of the god of fate. Yashio notices that she does not look like her brother at all and wonders about the origin of the game. Admiring the incredible graphics, he decides to explore later and instead reviews the profiles of other characters. The other three are family: Russ, a 33-year-old former shop owner, his strong 30-year-old wife Lee, and their strangely mature 7-year-old daughter Carol. Together with brothers and sisters, they form the main cast of the game's characters. Although Yashio loves to watch, he still does not know how to play. It is then that a bell informs him that the characters speak in text dialogue. Hams kneels and confesses that he could not protect his village and barely managed to save its inhabitants. Russ tells him to get up and adds that it is a miracle they escaped from the horde of monsters. Carol asks about the bright flash and calls the warrior her older brother. Kim sharply replies that Hams is her real brother. Yoshi notices Kino's obsession with his brother and puts the brothers in the spotlight. Jem scolds his sister for behaving childishly. Carol intervenes, teasing them both, and Yoshi appreciates detailed biographies and traits, believing it could be a solid game. Layla tries to prevent the girls from asking about the previous light. Kim explains that it flowed from her Bible. Another flash informs Yashio. He will be their god and lead the village to prosperity. He cannot directly control them, but can send a prophecy daily through the Bible, one page at a time. And the game encourages him to try it. Yashio is interested in this system. He is impressed that he can freely write commands instead of choosing from a list, but for now he postpones it, assuming they will only execute simple orders. After some effort, he proudly creates a divine command, claiming that if the AI understands even a little, he will call it a divine game. He presses enter to see how this advanced technology handles it. The Bible glows again. Kem, shocked, opens it, then falls to his knees in gratitude. God performs an incredible miracle, and this prompts her to tell everyone that she received a message from the god of fate. She shows the Bible to the astonished men, and this moves Russ so much that he cries. His wife and daughter apologize for not knowing how to read. Since Hams can only read a little, he asks his sister to read the message aloud, and seeing everyone's impatient looks, she prepares to read. Pretends to be the god of fate. Yashio says he drove away monsters with his miracle, promises to give them one miracle a day from now on, and wants them to listen to his message and live well. He orders them to cut down trees and arrange a safe place to spend the night. When his instructions are read aloud, Yashio is shocked and throws the chair back. Layla is happy that God cares about their happiness, and Russ is grateful that he gives them one command every day. The man is amazed that the characters understand everything he wrote. He is stunned and says that the game technology is ahead of its time and truly impressive. Yoshi was surprised when he saw how the characters reacted to his words. He suspects that they are just following a set pattern, and he is still curious about what kind of game this really is. After receiving the message, Kim tells the group to disperse and cut down a few trees. Russ says that even if they cut down trees that cannot be immediately used as timber, they need to be processed and dried first. The priestess and Yashio were caught off guard by this, and Yashio realized that the game rules are a bit more detailed. Russ explains that fresh wood must dry before it can be used as lumber, otherwise it may warp. The priestess and Neat admit that they did not know this. Russ believes that God, having greater wisdom, has his reasons, and suggests first cutting down and gathering trees to earn the god's gratitude. He takes tools from the cart. While he and Hams are cutting trees, the girls survey the surroundings in search of food. Yashio notices that the mouse can scroll and zoom the scene, looking at the narrow strip of visible land on the escape route. Yashio confirms that the view expands as the characters explore new places. He wonders how time works in the game and thinks it might run in real time, although he believes creating such is impossible. Another note appears, explaining that as the god of fate, he can spend faith points to perform miracles. These points depend on how much the peasants feel they owe him and are displayed on the screen. In the upper right corner, his fate points total 97. The more the peasants value him, the higher his points, and more residents increase them even further. When points rise due to the peasant's gratitude for his predictions, he realizes they will change depending on what exactly he prophesies. The note ends with the words that if the village prospers and grows, the influence of the miracle will strengthen. Yashio checks what miracles he has, starting with options like inviting useful guests, such as a traveling doctor or hunters, or reuniting with those who fled from villas. Seeing that he can change people's fates, he also notices control over the weather. Yashio notices he has few points and does not know what to choose, so he listens to the peasants and selects based on their advice. Overhearing Ruse and Hans chopping trees, the keeper of the shrine begins to speak and praise the god of faith. Faith talks about the weather and chemistry. He receives only short one-word answers, sees that there will be no serious conversation, so he approaches the girl gathering food. When Kim asks, Layla says they packed enough supplies for 2 weeks. The priestess wants to have a permanent food source by that time, and Yashio thinks of relying on visits from a traveling merchant to buy food. He believes that if they have to gather food themselves, they should go to the mountain, and he is curious about what they will find there. Yashio hesitates to send Gams on reconnaissance the next day because he worries that it will split their only fighter. If he wants to win the game smartly, he can send the less useful Carol to scout the area. Watching her gather mushrooms, he realizes that a careless step could destroy them all, and guilt will haunt him as he reviews the Wonders tab again. He notices the option to summon a familiar and thinks that he could expand the map's visibility and help them. He finds over 50 familiar creatures, such as slimes and unicorns, but decides that a bird would be best suited for reconnaissance. Still, their expenses are large. It is many more points than he has. Even ordinary animals like a cat or dog are beyond his means. He can only afford a chick. Although it lays eggs for food, Yashio grumbles that it is useless for reconnaissance, and he is upset because he has no way to earn more points. A bell interrupts and shows another way to increase his fate points, a payment system. The game instructions state that for every 1,000 yen he spends, he will receive 10 points. Yashio rubs his head, annoyed that the game has such an irritating mechanism. He's used to paid systems in games, but shocked that it is in the alpha version. Even having too few points for a familiar, Yashio figured that 20,000 yen would be enough for a cat or a small dog. Besides familiars, additional points could ease the peasants' lives. He rummages through the drawer and finds over 10,000 yen in savings. He thinks that selling his books and games will bring more money, and also considers the option of auctioning unopened prizes from the raffle. Later that night, he checks the villagers and contemplates options. They settle in the van to sleep, although it is only 9 o'clock. Carol says goodnight to Gems, along with Kem Chamey at 2. Han stays outside by the fire. Russ suggests he rest. Gans insists that someone must stay clean because the monster could attack at any moment. The father calms him, saying they themselves have seen God's miracles. The father adds that prophecies prove that the god of fate protects them, and Russ says that with God's power monsters won't dare to approach. But Gans is not convinced, and Yashio quietly apologizes to them because he wishes he had such power. He sighs, thinking that they may consider themselves completely safe, believing that God can do everything, and hesitates whether to admit that he himself is not omnipotent. Yashio hesitates because he knows his powers have limits, and fears that if this becomes known, people will be less grateful and he will lose points for their thanks, so he pushes it aside and immerses himself in online research on wood production. He evaluates it based on how long it has been since he last seriously studied, because for years he has only casually watched videos or movies. Instead, Yoshi was wandering around Reddit and thinks that if he had spent that time on other things, he could have given the peasants better advice. If he hadn't been so disorganized from the start, he would have had money to increase his fate points, and he says that the peasants might have lived more peacefully if their player had been an ordinary worker instead of him. Sighing, he wonders why he is still fixated on past regrets over a game that was supposed to bring pleasure. Looking at his disheveled reflection in the window, he grabbed his side in pain. He lifts his shirt and shows a deep scar on his abdomen. He says it hurts when it's cold, and it reminds him of the painful memory of how he got it. A creepy stalker was bothering his younger sister. So Yashio approached the boy and waved his hand for him to back off. When the boy did not respond, Yashio grabbed him by the collar and insisted that he had promised to leave her alone. The boy muttered something incomprehensible, and then, to Yashio's surprise, he also stabbed him in the abdomen with an automatic knife. That's the sister who screamed. The pursuer pulled out a knife, grinning wildly. When Yashio falls. In panic, Yashio shouted for help and ran away. Blood dripped behind him. He left his sister there. He remembers it as a turning point, after which nothing worked out, no matter what he did. Shaking off these memories, he notices that he is again at the computer in a mess and decides to dive even deeper into games, while Yashio sadly looks at the screen and accepts that he has no options left until the sun rises. Bright light pouring through his window wakes him up. He sees that it is already morning because he studied woodworking all night, fell asleep without noticing, and checks the time. He realized at 5:07 that he hadn't woken up so early in a long time. Returning to the computer, he looks at the peasants and sees that they have already woken up. Due to recent games, they are preparing some logs. Meanwhile, Kim is praying and Layla. Her daughter is gathering herbs. He understands that the game is in real time and begins to think about which prophecy to say today, but divine ideas disappear when his stomach growls and reminds him that he missed dinner last night because he was too absorbed in the game and ate all his snacks in the room. Going downstairs, he hopes to find food in the refrigerator, but stops when he hears voices behind the closed kitchen door. His sister asks their mother for soy sauce. He presses against the wall, nervously realizing that it is breakfast time. Dad says that today he will probably have to work overtime, and his sister asks him not to overexert himself. Yashio has not spoken to his younger sister since the stalker incident, and has not spoken to his father after a big quarrel over his job search. He imagines entering the kitchen and asking for breakfast, but quickly dismisses this thought as foolish, because everyone eats to gain energy for a busy day, and he, unemployed, feels that he cannot appear before them. In a depressed mood, he returns to the room and decides to train his muscles. After that event, he made training a habit to overcome fear and weakness and become tougher. The impulse of the bell is directed back to the village of Faith, where Bruce again draws his attention. Yoshi advises his daughter not to overwork herself, but she insists on continuing to work. He is happy to help and asks her to reach out if she needs assistance or encounters problems, and she readily agrees. Watching this, Yashio thinks that the peasants in the game live more vividly than he does. Upset, he stands in front of the monitor and warns them not to rely too much on an imperfect god. At that moment, the Bible shone, a new revelation came, and Kem joyfully announces it to everyone. She declares to the gathered peasants that a prophecy has come from the god of fate, and standing before them, she reads it aloud. Yashio explains that he has lost half of his power, can now only grant small miracles, and, as before, take care of them, so he asks his faithful to unite with the people nearby to endure. He blesses them. Silence falls over the group as they absorb this last prophecy. Yashio, worried, hides his face in his palm and ponders. He fears that the peasants may lose faith in God, who is making excuses because he thinks he should have come up with a more convincing explanation, and Kim interrupts his sadness and excitedly says that it is good that God still protects them. To his surprise, Russ praises him for the blessing and suggests that his weakened state may be due to fighting demons. Russ decides that he can no longer rely solely on God and promises to strengthen their defense. Yashio is stunned that something positive came from his pessimistic words. Seeing that his fate points have risen to 110, he realizes that the content of the prophecy determines how many points he receives, but with a daily increase of only 13 points, he doubts he can even summon a useful miracle weekly. Without changing the peasants' lives, eavesdropping on the girls, he hears Kim say that it is strange to sleep in a cart. And they need a wall or fence against monsters, and Lyle complains that they have no salt. Yashio knows that he could ease some fears if he had more points of faith. He could relieve some of their worries, but hesitates to spend them, so he decided to earn points through the payment system and put all his unopened raffle prizes up for auction, expecting 30,000 yen. Looking at his comics and old things, he decided that he could quickly sell them at a used bookstore. The thing is, to sell them, he has to leave the house, and he hasn't done that yet. After late nights about 2 years ago, thinking about the next move, Yashio focuses on the game and realizes it would be a shame to lose it completely if the villagers are completely broken. Having no other options, the young man decides to go outside, and while dressing in front of the mirror, he notices that he has hardly gained any weight, but the clothes have become tight. When he was a child, he imagined his 30s as a time of sophistication and thought he would naturally become an elegant adult. Looking in the mirror at a tired, unkempt man, Yashio begins to worry and decides to postpone going out, to go tomorrow if he feels better. Leaning back in the chair in front of the monitor, he watches Carol happily walking along the path, carrying sticks in her hands. She stumbles over a stone, fell to the ground, and scattered the sticks everywhere. Yashio looks scared and helpless. Carol squeezes her scratched knee. Unafraid, she wipes away tears and gathers the sticks again. Yashio bravely continues moving back toward the cart. Caught Yashio by surprise when he was looking for other villagers. He notices the log being pulled by Hands and Rue. While the girls wash laundry in cold weather, they realize that everything has changed since yesterday. He is determined to give all his strength. He goes to the door, leaving his confused mother in the hallway. She is puzzled because this is unusual and asks what is happening. But he simply says he will return soon and takes his bicycle. Yashio passes by stunned neighbors, ignoring their looks and whispers, and rides away. Filled with self-hatred and guilt, Yashio imagines the neighbors mocking him for being unemployed despite his age. Ashamed, he closes his eyes, overwhelmed by his emotions. But then he remembers the resilience of the peasant and drives away his bad thoughts. He quickly heads to the bookstore, where he sells his games and books. Then he browses the shelves looking for something useful. The condemning glances and words of the neighbor echo in his head, but he does not give up and moves on. In the bookstore, Yashio comes across several Isekai manga and notices that the characters in these stories thank others for sharing modern knowledge. He thinks this might suit his game, although the context is different, but he is too poor to buy even a cheap book costing a few hundred yen. Writing a letter home, he passes by a confectionery, remembering old visits there with his family. The past seems distant because he is focused on his current goal. In the confectionery, the seller warmly greets him. Looking at the displays, Yashio recalls how in childhood he chose sweets together with his sister. Keeping his head lowered, he orders 4 puddings, considering it a small luxury, then leaves. Returning home, he finds his mother in the living room. He gives her a packet of pudding. She is grateful for the unexpected gift, and Yashio shilly explains that he took enough for everyone, after which he goes upstairs. In his room, Yashio does not understand why he feels ashamed, because he believes that a worthless person should not be happy about one small deed. Depressed, he looks at the sky and says aloud that he does not know what to do with his life at such an age after selling his belongings. He earned 20,000 yen, and his fate points increased to 310, and watches as the villagers have dinner by the fire, thinking about what miracle to perform. The day before, he found a system that allows viewing past events, and it sparked his curiosity. Yashio thinks the villagers' past viewing function is cool, but hesitates because it seems like spying. Wanting to satisfy their desires, he gives in and checks it out. He overheard the girls' conversation while he was away and heard them, while washing laundry, praising the good weather and the convenience of the river near the camp. Layla said she wanted to wash but was afraid of monster attacks when without clothes, which caused a playful quarrel. Layla says she doesn't mind if the villagers see her because her husband and daughter don't mind, and Gamsu is indifferent. But when Carol agrees about gems, Kim sharply disagrees. She insists that her calm brother is still a man, which shows that she is very attached to her brother. Yoshi decides that Layla and Carol are not a problem, but Kim's brother complex seems deeper than he thought. The conversation remains casual until Layla mentions a past monster attack, which changes the mood. Layla recalls a swarm of monsters that devastated the village, and Kim adds that it was a large settlement with stone walls. Besides hams, there were several hunters, but despite their defense, many of them died when the monsters broke through. Interested, Yashio watches as the god of fate delves into the girls' conversation, records to learn more. The village once housed hundreds of people, but a huge monster invasion destroyed it. They fought for some time, but the losses were great and left a permanent mark on the survivors. In the game, the village was eventually captured, so Yoshi and others had to flee, taking some villagers on horse widens, and when the villagers noticed the danger, only they remained. They left, escaped from the monsters, and headed into the forest, but during the escape their horse-drawn cart was damaged, so long journeys became difficult, and they better understood the game world. Yashio now understands why the story shows the escaped villagers gathering again. Looking at the screen, he decides to bring them all back. Later, his mother calls him downstairs for dinner and interrupts the game. He is shocked to see his emotionless father at the kitchen table so early. Since his father became distant, they see each other only a few times a month. They exchange short, indifferent phrases like, "How are you?" or "Do what you want," and this tension started after a big argument. Calling his father polite would not be quite right. It is more accurate to say that the father is not interested in Yashio. He asks if his sister Saki works late. His mother agrees. Unlike Yashio, Saki has succeeded, got a job in the industry of her dreams, and seems happy, even working overtime. Yashio talked at length about his day, mentioned that he received a handmade tsukumen from a neighbor named Akiku, offered to try some, and told how he met this woman. Akiku, an elderly landlady, lives in a large old house nearby. When Yashio was younger, he played there with a friend, and Akiku gave them candies. His family's house is not as luxurious as Akiku's, but it is a decent house with a garden. Yashio can live there as a tenant because his father earns well. Thanking his mother for dinner, Yashio quickly gets up, takes the plates to the sink, and his mother asks him to take pudding and also take some for his father. She explains that Saki baked it. His father's eyes open wide at this, and Yashio looks at him anxiously until he takes the pudding. Returning to the room after putting Eaton to bed, Yashio goes back to the game, sees that everyone except Gems has gone to the horse cart, and sitting alone by the campfire, notices that Gem's night watch is highly valued. Gams quietly adjusts the fire with a stick, and Yashio considers him a reliable person because Gam's calm reminds him of his father. Gems is the only fighter among the peasants. Russ and his family are useless in battle, and Kim, although able to heal with magic, is not suited for combat. Turning away from the screen, Yashio loudly says that both he and the peasants rely on games and that he would like more help. He knows that he can use fake points to summon people to the village, but summoning one person costs a lot of points, and there is a cheaper option to summon a random person, although it is risky. If luck stands against him, a criminal may appear and cause chaos. He also knows that dependence on pay-to-win mechanics is a dangerous trap to avoid. Moreover, Yashio really wants a familiar because he feels that something is missing. He scratches his head, annoyed that a simple game troubles him so much. He replies and decides to think about it tomorrow because he is exhausted after the first walk in many years and says that Hams is going to sleep, and wishes the villagers good night, to jump only when the alarm signal sounds in the game. Stunned, he sees a warning about an attack on the screen, and a calm but firm voice calls everyone to stand up before the attack begins, raising the other villagers. From the horse-drawn cart, the group looks at him through the fluttering fabric while he is turned toward the forest. Turning back to them, he prepares his weapons. He clenches a dagger and carefully draws a long sword from the sheath on his back. Without looking back, says he senses monsters. The warrior orders Kim to guard everyone and stay near the cart under any circumstances. Frightened, Ruth asks Carol to stay inside because it is risky. The little girl then asks Hams about his condition. Meanwhile, the warrior prepares to fight alone. Simonsist will join him, but her brother does not allow it, saying she only has healing magic and he needs her to take care of others. She holds back tears and reluctantly agrees. While Yashio panics and shouts at the monitor, he holds it tightly and does not see the monsters in the darkness. Suddenly, two shadowy figures jumped out of the bushes near the campfire, quickly growing again. The god of fate watches as the game calls them black dogs. The homeless dogs transform into fierce carnivorous beasts with extraordinary strength, and in rare cases with poisonous fangs. Yashio worries and says that although Hams is strong, he is too lonely in this. Ham's hair stood on end as the monsters approached, clashing with his blades, growling and advancing. While Yashio allowed hopes that Hams will survive, and then realizes he is a god, Yashio grabs his moss, looking for a miracle to use as. When Gan looks the beasts in the eyes, the black dogs dine together, trying to strike him from both sides. But at the right moment, the skilled warrior swings both swords. Impressive, and then, simultaneously, they fall within a few steps, whimper their last and die, and Gems with a grim face strides toward his victory, nudging the paw of one animal with his foot to make sure it is dead, then plunges a long sword into the fallen dog to confirm it. Yoshi from Cheers loudly says that the warrior is cool, looking at the screen and admiring. She approaches her older brother and asks if everything is okay, but the smile fades when Gem says he is sorry, and she realizes that now he will rely on her. Right before he faints, leaving her stunned. Seeing this, she calls her older brother, who lies motionless and drenched in sweat. Yashio grabs the screen with both hands, his face twisted with shock and fear for Hans's fate. Kem calls it a perfect victory despite the collapse and kneels, holding the unconscious brother's head on his lap. While Rouse hurries to help, the warriors writhe in pain, sweaty, and the god of fate helplessly watches the village's key fighter. Kim tightly squeezes her brother's breathless body, screams for him to wake up, feels his warmth fading, and screams in despair. In shock, Yashio grabs the monitor and yells into it, trying to understand what is happening to Hans. Russ approaches the distressed priestess and asks her to calm down. She takes her brother's hand, feels a weak pulse, but notices that his body is getting colder and his face is turning pale. Looking closer at the hand, he sees a deep wound. Frightened by the dark shade of the wounds, Rast looks at the black dog that Hams wounded and realizes that the dog bit him and suspects that it has poisonous fangs. He asks Kim if she knows any spells against poison. Hearing this, Yashio does not lose hope, remembering that the healing abilities of the priestess can save Gans. But this hope disappears when she sadly says that she has not yet mastered antidote magic. Then they quickly ask Russ if he has anything useful. Russ, a former shopkeeper, lowers his eyes and says he is sorry. They say that there are no antidotes in their bags. Carol clings to her mother's skirt and looks in horror, realizing the full seriousness of the situation. Kim trembles with grief and fear. She tightly hugs her brother and begs him not to go. She raises her eyes to the sky. She begs God to spare him and promises anything in return, tears rolling down her face. The troubled god of fate thinks about his next move. Realizing that Hamsa's death will end everything and doubting whether he can act upon seeing the peasants suffering, he decides to intervene, reminding himself of divine power, casts aside fear, boldly steps forward, and says that only a miracle can fix this, and recalling the rules of the game finds a way to turn this critical moment back. And opens the Wonders menu, reviews the options and rejects unnecessary ones, such as the merchant or hunters. Until the traveling doctor arrives, he notices the high cost of 300 points, but confident that there is an antidote, he hastily selects it. He loudly says that even its activation does not guarantee an instant result, but he is forced to take the risk. A late burst of emotions frightens his mother downstairs. The mother calls him, but Yashio, lost in thought, barely notices and thinks that the doctor's appearance right now would be too perfect. Looking at the clock, he sees that it is already past midnight. He enters the command and waits for Kemp's result. Ken is still holding her brother and urges him to respond when a voice sounds behind her. A hooded figure emerges from the forest and crosses the campfire. A leather bag hangs at his side, his face focused and determined. Kim, still holding her brother, demands to know who he is, and Russ, agitated, grabs Hamsa's spare blade and points it at the stranger while the family watches fearfully. The man calms them down, introducing himself as a traveling doctor. While Russ remains cautious, the girl casts doubtful glances, and Yashio believes their suspicions about this timely arrival make sense, and with a sly smile presses the enter key. And the Bible decides. Ken springs openly. It shines brightly again, its pages turn by themselves until they stop at the last prophecy of the God of Faith. Reading the shining words, the stunned priestess cannot hold back tears and raises her. She lifted her eyes to the sky and loudly expressed sincere gratitude to the deity. Before she hugged her brother tightly again, Russ watches what is happening. The doctor announces that this really was the right place. He asks permission to examine gems, and the surprised shopkeeper reluctantly agrees. The doctor steps forward and stands over the sisters' legs, which are still holding onto each other. Ken lowers his eyes and begs the doctor for safety. Him and Carol prays that he will be all right. Examining the festering wound caused by the black dog, the doctor quickly identifies the problem. He opens the bag, takes out a small bottle, and pours some liquid into Gama's mouth, pouring the rest onto the open wound. The warriors suffer pain as he reacts to the treatment. But soon everything calms down, the treatment works, and color begins to return, cheeks blush again. And the villagers rejoice at such a turn of events. Yashio sighs with relief and leans back in the chair, happy that the miracle succeeded and the doctor arrived on time. He says they should thank the doctor with long hair, although he is not sure if it is a man or a woman. Kim continues to hug his brother, comforting him, while Russ takes the Bible and reads it aloud. The God of Fate wrote that he used his power to bring the doctor to them, said that Hans is not yet to join him and will recover, promised to show kindness to the brave warrior, and added that the trials will continue, but assured him that he is watching over them. Yashio tries to say this grandly and in a divine tone, but doubts if it sounds good. While the sighs and relief of the young man, as Russ understands it, are as intended. Addressing the group, he praises their efforts and says that from now on he can only observe. The next morning, Layla and Carol set out into the forest to gather berries. The girl asks if Hams will feel better after he eats them, and the mother cheerfully confirms that he will. Meanwhile, anxious Ras takes on the duties of Ham's guardian in the forest, grabs a sword and looks around in all directions, promises to protect everyone now, gets scared by a rustle in the nearby bushes and jumps back. Only to see a white rabbit jump out. In the camp, someone kneels beside her resting brother, while the doctor grinds herbs in a mortar. After a moment of hesitation, the priestess asks him why he came to their territory. The doctor explains that his family has been healers for generations, and that this place, called the Forbidden Forest, is full of both monsters and abundant herbs. The day before, when he finished gathering herbs and was about to set up camp, he noticed a beam of light in the forest. Puzzled by this strange sight, he hesitated whether to go check it out, but the unrest in his chest made him follow the light. Kem sincerely claims that it was divine providence. Surely they were led by some higher power, and the doctor admits that although he believes more in nature and does not follow any particular deity, yesterday's event could indeed have been divine intervention. Yashio crosses his arms and realizes that the doctor is an agnostic, admits that God may exist but does not fully commit to faith, unlike Yan, whose belief is connected with fatigue. Kan asks if the doctor will leave soon, but the doctor explains that although the hardest part is behind, he is not yet ready to leave the patient. The doctor assures Kim that he can stay a little longer and asks for permission for him to stay with them. Ken's expression shines, warmly inviting him to stay as long as he wants, but she says that they don't have a real home right now and clarifies if that suits him. Yashio quietly looks with relief, glad they were saved, and pleased that the doctor will stay in the village. He thinks about the cramped conditions and notices that the cart is already full, so if they take the doctor, someone will have to sleep outside. Although this time they survived, Yashio understands that this is only a short respite from danger, and another attack by the black dogs could completely destroy them. Although Hamsa was saved, he probably won't be able to move well for several days. And Russ is too weak to perform his role. Yashio decides that they need reliable housing and thinks about how to spend his fate points to arrange it. The doctor offers a solution and shows a nearby abandoned mine ruin where they can hide. It protects from bad weather and still has old mining tools inside. Yashio is impressed by this discovery, surprised that the doctor knew about such a place nearby, and grateful that now the villagers have a safe place to rest. Rast, excited, asked the doctor to lead them there, and they set off. The cave is only 5 minutes from their camp, so they can return later for firewood. The horse-drawn cart sets off to the new place. The cart travels along narrow roads near the cliff, until it reaches the tunnel, closed with boards and 2 doors. The doctor explains that the larger doors were for transporting goods, and all the smaller ones lead into the tunnels. Long ago, minerals were extracted there, and when richer deposits were found nearby, the old place was converted into living quarters and storage. The doctor and Roz push the large doors, and the villagers drive the cart into the cave. Inside, the doctor taps on the lantern on the wall. The ore inside brightly glowed, and simultaneously lit all the other lamps in the cave. The light illuminates a large space with a table, chairs, boxes, and round doors in the wall. The villagers are amazed at how big it is. And Yashio is equally amazed. He sees this place as dusty and worn, but it is much better than the cart, and this excites Ruse as he examines it. The doors lead to rooms, and the doctor notices that the miners carve them out for their own corners. The group became so captivated by their new home that they barely pay attention to his words. Back in the cart, Kim gently holds his brother's hand, says they are already in a safe place, and wishes him a speedy recovery. Meanwhile, Layla notices a source of fresh water in the cave wall, a stone stove, and simple kitchen utensils, and rejoices at the find. She says they can start household chores, which pleases her daughter. At first, she rolls up her sleeves and resolutely begins to clean the place thoroughly. Yashio sincerely thanks the doctor for bringing them to this safe place. Over time, the doctor takes care of the games in one of the rooms while he recovers. In the main hall, Layla asks everyone to be silent so as not to disturb the resting warrior, and insists that the cleaning be so thorough that Hams will be surprised when he wakes up. The villagers are busy arranging the cave, moving things around and cleaning the floor. They take out the trash outside, but leave in the corner everything that can be repaired. Carol cleans the floor in one room and happily looks at the bed. She says that since there are 4 rooms, she will share one room with Hams and dreams of falling asleep next to him. Who is eavesdropping on this and looking at Carol from the door. Quietly tells herself that her older brother is more likely to share a room with her, and Ken thinks that Carol is still young and doesn't worry much about it, but thinks that Gam spoils her too much. She believes that he should refuse Carol, even if she is a child, when it is not what he wants. Meanwhile, Lyle is eavesdropping on Kim, who does not suspect it, and then walks away. Yashio worries about the connection between Kim and Carol, but sees that they get along among the villagers. He thinks that if they make the cave livable, then for now there will be no housing problems, and he will finally be able to focus on other matters, and Yashio is pleased with the thought of a real village and sighs contentedly. He gets up from the chair, stretches, and notices that it is already noon. His eyes are tired, his stomach growls, so he decides to go eat. When he leaves the room, the door opposite opens, and he finds himself face to face with his younger sister Saki. She notices his untidy appearance, and Yashio freezes. Her name can be called. Saki throws her hair back, looking at him. Yashio asks if she was on a break, but she does not answer him at all. Soki asks Yoshi to step aside so she can come down and eat. He nervously says that he is also going to the first floor. Hearing this, Saki decisively orders him not to use the toilet there, standing with her hands on her hips and looking at him sternly. Yashio turns to her and begins to respond, but suddenly remembers the incident with the stalker, and he feels ashamed. He looks down, agrees, and turns away, promising not to use the toilet on the first floor. As he continues down the stairs, irritated Saki asks to argue at least a little and weakly asks if he thinks she is stupid. Returning to his room, Yashio thinks that Saki has become much more irritable after the incident with the stalker. Every time they now see each other, the atmosphere becomes tense. It was not like this before. They were very close and often spent time together. Now everything has changed, and you feel sad and think that without that event, they could have remained close, and Yashio wonders what their life could have been like if that incident had never happened. A sharp pain pierces his scar as he recalls the encounter with the stalker. But he forces himself to move on because he knows that regret will not fix anything. He decides to check the villagers and focuses on the common room of the cave, where cleaning is almost finished. Layla notices how everything looks here, and Rue asks where Ken is. His wife says that she is checking on him together with Gems. Carol wants to leave, but her father says to give them some space for now. Instead, he suggests exploring the rest of the cave with her, and she gladly agrees, waiting to show Gams the city later when he feels better. Meanwhile, the doctor makes notes while Gams rests in the bed nearby. Kim comes in and asks to look after her brother while the doctor rests. He agrees, noticing that the effect of the poison has weakened, and tells her to call him if anything strange happens. Together with Gams, Kim takes his hand and assures him that she is nearby. Yashio sees that Gams's health is gradually improving. Stable thought he could step away from him for a moment. But then he noticed a pop-up window with the inscription, "Dream," coming out of the warrior, and it intrigued him what it could mean. Everly clicked on it and was surprised. The screen completely changed. When the new image cleared up, he saw an unfamiliar place where younger figures were passing through the door. The clerk handed Hans a pouch with a reward for defeating the monsters and praised him for completing the first task. Yozo then realized he had been noticed as Gams's dream unfolded. And Gans thanked the clerk. Games refused the offer of other travelers to go for a drink. Explained that his younger sister was waiting for him at home. Yashio is the person he was talking about, Kim. This shows that for Gens, a simpler, more innocent time had passed. When the warrior returned home and went inside, he saw his father at the table, drinking heavily with empty bottles scattered around. Irritated, Gams pointed out that his father was drunk again, causing the man to angrily throw a bottle in his direction and start shouting about his disrespectful tone. Jem stood firm and did not back down. The warrior threw a wallet on the table as payment for his father watching over Ken while the warrior himself was at work. The man looked into the purse and was already thinking of buying more alcohol. But when Gems asked where his sister was, his father fell silent, descending the stairs. Gems was devastated when he found his sister in tattered rags. She lay on a dirty rag on the floor, almost weakened by hunger, and he moved her closer, asking her to hold on and inquiring how long it had been since she last ate, while Yashio remarked that it was a terrible sight. Angry and trembling, Gam apologized to her for not taking her out of that horrible place sooner, stood up to leave the house. His father tried to cover for him, saying he was reckless only because he was drunk, and promising to abide by their agreement from now on. Gems, unmoved and outraged, ordered him to step aside or face serious consequences. The stern look made the man immediately comply. He walked through the snowy night, carrying his sister on his back. The girl asked Gems where they were heading, aloud wondering where they were going, and Gems replied that anywhere but back. Ken was worried that their father would get angry if they did not return soon. James firmly said that they would never see him again, so she did not need to be afraid. She admitted that their parents probably hated her for being a troublesome child because they constantly scolded her. Began to sharply respond that their parents were wrong. He told that Eden wanted to sell Kim into slavery supposedly because she behaved badly, which she did not deserve, and even called her worthless, saying that she should at least be useful in some way. And Josiah understood what terrible conditions they had to endure. Ham stopped, put his sister on the ground, turned to her, and said that she should no longer consider those people her parents and erase them from her memory. He offered her to live with him from then on, as she wished, and she cheerfully said that she would be happy as long as her older brother was nearby. Hugging her, Hams promised that they would have a good time and find happiness together. And she nodded in agreement. The screen returned to normal, and Yoshi understood that this explained Kim's strong attachment to her brother, seeing how she began to rely on her reliable older brother or sister. When Kim squeezed Hans's hand, the warrior woke up and apologized for making her worry. With tears in her eyes, she hides. She hugged him and with relief realized that he was fine. Others soon noticed that Hams had woken up. Ironically praised the doctor, while Layla and Carol rejoice. He was grateful to have returned. Yoshi will lean back to relax. Notice that all the villagers were also delighted because there was no one like Hams around. Hans is a reliable and likable character who naturally enjoys popularity due to his appearance and strength. Unlike the young man who nervously laughs when describing him, the young man explains that Hams always risked his life to protect his sister, confident that their bond will never weaken. He laughs awkwardly until he notices tears streaming down his face. I wipe them away. He asks himself why he hasn't changed, although he deeply regrets the past. He is brought to tears, hunched over the table, feeling depressed and desperate, insisting that he wants to change, while tears still flow from his eyes. Yasha's father and sister leave early for work. Saki praises the tie he once gave him. From his bedroom window, Yashio sadly watches them leave until the sound from his computer catches his attention. On the screen, he sees Layla cooking in the cave. Ask Carol to set the table while she prepares food, before Gems and the doctor return from Patrol 3. Several days have passed since the villagers settled in the cave. Now we have everything necessary for everyday life, thanks to everyone who helped. Their lives have significantly improved thanks to this joint effort. While Russ repairs the furniture and Ken erects the structure, Yashio thinks about how this protected, well-equipped cave differs from the rough temporary camp before, and decides that the pain they endured for this miracle was worth it. Checking the patrol in the forest, Yashio realizes that the doctor is the greatest gift of the miracle. In the clearing, Ham stands with a weapon, ready to meet the fierce boar charging straight at him. He bravely repels the monster's attack with his crossed blades. He holds his position, although the boar pushes him back, and while Ham holds the boar, the doctor draws his bow. Carefully aim at the boar's head, and releases an arrow that hits the target. The arrow gets stuck in Bora's eye and from the bushes. The doctor warns Ham not to overexert himself while his injury is still healing. Hans thanks him and calls him Mouse, the traveling doctor whom Yashio miraculously summoned. Mystical cells are needed not only for creating medicines and treatment, but also for archery, which balances close combat game well. Moreover, the doctor can control plants with magic and applied it to the wood they needed, so what usually would have taken months, they managed to do instantly. Also led them to the cave, almost incredibly skillfully. Yoshi, of a certain height, wanted the mouse to stay in the village. Although he is currently only a guest, and his past remains unknown, the conditions of his permanent joining are undefined. Because of this, Yashio honored, especially after he spent fake points worth 30,000 yen, realized that the game is not so simple. Gams and the doctor tie up the boar and drag it back into the cave, where Kem and Carol meet them in the main chamber. Ruse is impressed by the catch they brought, and Carol is happy when her mother announces that there will be meat for dinner. She adds that they have little salt and spices needed for cooking and preserving the meat. Yoshi agrees that this is a real problem. Note that even if there is a lot of harvest, fish, and game near the cave, to thrive they need more than just abundance. The villagers decide that they need a permanent food source, so they begin to create a new farm. They quickly realize that for the crops they needed seeds, salt, and spices. The leader wonders if the arrival of a traveling merchant to Miracle could bring the seller to the village. He enthusiastically shares his bigger plan to call him out. A golem as an assistant at any cost. Golem is a stone figure resembling a human that can perform simple instructions. This creature does not get tired and can work all day. Even better, the player can control it with a game controller. These sturdy stone creatures could solve the worker shortage in the village thanks to their inexhaustible energy and strength. For Yashio, the best part is that he can use the controller to lead the golem and be active, not just watch the village. But summoning a golem costs 700 fake points, which corresponds to 7,000 yen in real money. He has already spent 300 points to summon Messi and has almost exhausted his reserves for a while. Fortunately, Hams and his daily prophecies increased the peasant's gratitude to God, so his points rose to 160. He receives 10 points daily due to their gratitude, so he plans to save up for go-on if he doesn't spend money for almost 2 months. He rubs his head and wonders how long this wait will be felt. He admits that he cannot buy more fake points because he has no savings left. Previously, he saved money, childhood savings, and the extra money his father gave him one cheerful day, but since then he has spent it all on the Village of Faith. Looking up, he sees how the peasants are cheerfully having dinner together. Then the sighs remains, and goes downstairs to brew coffee. Later, when he was drinking coffee, he remembers that a few days ago Kim and Hams were building something together, and he wonders what their project is. Ken cheerfully says that it is almost ready, asking her brother if it can be done the way they did. In front of her, Ken says that it is almost ready, asking her brother if it can be done the way they did. In front of her, Ken says that it is almost ready, asking her brother if it can be done the way they did. One of them is a rough sanctuary of the god of fate, whose figure is carved from a tree trunk. Ham strokes Kim's head, assuring her that her heart is the most important, and believes that their deity feels their intention. They approach incorrectly, asking if this is the altar and statue of their god. The priest disagrees and apologizes for its rough appearance. They built this place to honor him and leave gifts. And Yashio is pleased with the peasant's devotion. He notices that the rough shape of the statue does not make it clear whether it is a man or a woman. Earlier, he thought the god was a man, but now he doubts its gender. Ken places 3 fruits on the altar as an offering. While the peasants pray, fruits glow and disappear during prayer. At first, this frightens Yashio, but he believes that the disappearance of gifts makes sense in a world where there is God. He notices that his fate points have increased by 1 and associates this with the offering. A message appears explaining that points are awarded both for gratitude and for gifts, with more expensive items giving more. Calling on him to support the peasants in the style of a game show host. Seeing this, he wonders whether to ask the peasants to give away unnecessary things. Although more valuable gifts would give more points, he does not want to bother them, so he decides not to push too hard. The Bible of Kim shines with a new prophecy. Yashio thanks the peasants for their feelings because they gathered to listen. Miss Watches stands on the wall with crossed arms and watches as the god of fate speaks. The young man tells the peasants that they do not need to strain themselves and that they can give him extra or unnecessary things, and he will turn them into miracles. He wonders if it sounded like he was asking, but the peasants sincerely call them modest and kind. Yashai notes that they are innocent, says that in modern Japan they would probably fall for a scam or a dubious religion, and admits that now one of those is deceiving them. At the next date, Russ asks Gams to help him. Yoshi watches as they pull the deck into the cave. Put this on the altar, pray, and make it disappear. Surprised that they can offer something so big, he doubts whether they will give donations daily and whether praising God brings them joy. Notices that it is already afternoon. He reaches out until his mother says that a package has arrived for him. He feels that she is irritated. Goes downstairs, accepts the delivery, and is shocked by what he sees. It is addressed to him from the Village of Faith. Does not want to believe that this is a gift from the game world. He says aloud that this is probably from the contest he won, but secretly thinks that these are just extra items from the gaming company, such as instructions or notes. He sighs and feels awkward because he overdid it, because his mom opens the box. Yashio's eyes widen in disbelief when he sees it. He sees 3 strange fruits from the game inside. His mom cannot name them and casually asks if he wants exotic fruits from somewhere. He agrees to try them for dessert. Noticed that one looks like an apple but smells like citrus, and remembered that the villagers like them. He bites, enjoy the wonderful taste, and decides that the creators cleverly sent a rare Japanese fruit from abroad. Satisfied with the tasty gift, he has no complaints. The next day, he thanks the villagers for the gift, asks them not to overdo it and not to waste food. He says he will take non-food items if they are lacking, and asks to put himself first because daily offerings are not needed. He thinks that as soon as he collects enough points for gum, he will definitely help everyone. To see Ken cleaning the statue, Mom sharply pulls Yashio out of the game, shouts for him to hurry, and he notices that she is angry. When he goes downstairs, she asks what he will do with it, and he is stunned to see yesterday's record sent by the Village of Faith. Anxiety, he says, this joke has gone too far. He was dragging a heavy log into the backyard. He remembers how Mom told him to use his incredibly strong body to move it. Tired, he recalls how Ru's and hands worked when he told them to start chopping trees, then tries to brush it off and calm down. I can't take deliveries seriously. He decides to complain to the gang company. I check the stamp for the presence of a contact number and do not find it. He sees that it is from Hokkaido. Even at the company's address, nothing can be found, and on the satellite map, only a small building is visible. He doubts that a small company could have made such a wonderful game and is not sure if it is really theirs. Somewhere else, he grumbles about the company's secrecy. Upset that he cannot go to Hokkaido to check his suspicions, and does not know what to do with the magazine he has. The next day, a new package arrives. This time it is a cooler. When he opens it, he sees that it is stuffed with fresh meat, probably from a fierce boar. Remembering how Gams and most hunted him the day before in Canada, he was offered a share near the altar. To his surprise, his mother enters the kitchen while he awkwardly tries to explain what is standing before them. She nervously asks if he wasted money on something suspicious. So he quickly comes up with a story about an online project to revive the village and says that his idea was accepted. That is why he communicates with the villagers, who from time to time send him local treats as a token of gratitude. His mother fully believes this story and is glad to hear it. Meanwhile, Yashio quietly admits to himself that it is partly true. He hands her the meat, says it is wild boar, and suggests cooking it while she thinks about how to use it. She thinks about how to cook it, and Yashio secretly worries whether it is even safe to eat, convincing himself that it is not real monster meat. Since then, he has received packages from the Village of Faith almost every day. Things like various fruits, monster meat, and so on. Even a glowing crystal that activates with light and, as he believes, has a bolt inside. He also occasionally received logs. There are 3 of them so far, and he wonders if someone will buy them from him. He drags one into the garden, and seeing all these gifts, he begins to think that building a village in the game is beneficial. Let's give the player valuable items as rewards. He assumes that the game was created by rich people, and he was accidentally chosen as a tester. One evening, he is eating some monster meat he obtained at the table with his parents. His father eats quietly and looks worried. His mother asks if they can have more fruit. She says she feels healthier since she started eating village food. And Yashio promises to ask the villagers for more. She recalls that Saki also loved meat. His father adds that it is tasty, praising the natural flavor and texture. Yashio realizes that he hasn't heard his father talk so much in a long time, thinking that he really likes it. Later in the garden, Yashio tries to craft from logs, hoping to teach the peasants something. He sees that sawing is harder than expected and worries about possible mistakes when his father approaches. He asks what he is doing now. Yashio explains that it is a pity to waste the wood and asks to use his father's extra tools. He tries to saw, but the blade keeps getting stuck. His father tells him to step aside and takes the task into his own hands. Yashio watches excitedly as his father easily cuts the wood. He wanted to get out, so he was using the saw incorrectly. Yashio thinks that this way he will avoid complaints from the neighbors about the noise and returns the tool. After that, his father starts giving him advice. That weekend, they turn the logs into boards to repair the garden fence. Thinking that he can teach the peasants to cook me, he asks Mom to show him a few recipes. He learns to cook himself and starts having lunch with the peasants every day. One evening, he was in the kitchen when Sok returned from work. Hans likes to talk to her and meet her at home, thanking the Village of Fate for making this possible. He is not sure if he is helping the peasants or they are helping him. He is most concerned about the defense of the village. Therefore, he checks the policy around the entrance to the cave. When Kim asks if the monsters could jump over it, he assures her that he and the mouse can handle anyone who gets in there. However, he admits that the real problem is that they are again significantly outnumbered, and he accepts this in a grim tone. Yoshi notices that they are now more confident in defense, but the peasants have been behaving strangely lately. At first glance, their life seems calm and stable, almost without worries. But they seem to pretend to be calm, hiding inner anxiety. Carol also notices this, because their daily conversations become tense and boring. And everyone sighs, looking at the wooden calendar. Closer to the end of the month, Yashio wonders if something big is approaching. When all the villagers gather around the table, Carol asks why they are so upset. After nervous glances, Ruse and Illa try to calm her with a small lie. She notices how they tense up looking at the calendar, and how her father realizes they cannot keep this secret. He strokes her head and sits down next to her. He recalls how in the village, she was always told to stay home on the last day of the month. She remembers how the village closed up then, and the adults that day were frightened and irritable. Russ explains to his daughter that all this was to protect the children, and asks if she remembers the world calendar. She tells that every month one of the 7 gods, Earth, Moon, Nature, Water, Fire, Light, and Thunder, rules the world, and Yashio marks this in his mind as a god. Carol asks her father why only 7 gods have power, especially considering the 12 months. Russ explains that these gods of Stephen once each ruled only a week. They give names to the days of the week and are the main gods of the world, overseeing lesser gods, such as the god of fate. Yashio begins to better understand his role and learns that the 7-day system collapsed after a great god battle that changed the balance of power, causing sharp weather fluctuations, since each playing field needs a whole year to stabilize. The battles ceased, and the 7 gods remained to rule both in their days and in periods of prosperity. The defeated gods, called evil, were driven deep underground. There they still grow stronger, trying once a month to resurface again and strengthen monsters with their power, and the last such day is called the temptation of the evil god. Combine monsters, fears, and cruelty, and Yashio sees why the villagers are wary. Noticing that their calendar coincides with the calendars of his worlds, he calculates that there are 10 days left until this event. With the current fate points, Yoshi understands that he will not be able to protect the peasants. And when the clock shows 11 in the evening, he notices that Russo is sitting alone at the table. A rare case, Roz's wife asks what is troubling him, noting his recent insomnia. Grabbing his head, he admits that he cannot resist the temptation of the last evil god, saying that they barely escaped unharmed and that another monster attack is approaching. This time he is afraid of losing his family. He speaks with a tremor in his voice, and this makes Yashio curious about what happened then. Carol wakes up in her bed on a bright, quiet morning. She wants to know where her parents are. She approaches the mirror and looks at her face, happy that she looks cute today as well. Going downstairs, she sees her parents in the kitchen and says good morning. And they respond joyfully, while her mother tells her to wash her face. The laughing girl goes outside and washes her face with well water, enjoying its coldness and freshness. Suddenly, Carol remembers that she didn't take a towel while fixing her hair and thinks how good she is. Ken approaches with a bucket and asks if she just got up. Carol asks her where Big Brother Hams is, and Kim strangely says that he is guarding the village gates. Yawning, Carol says she doesn't care that he is not there, and it annoys the priestess. Then she runs away and slams the door while Kim shouts after her. At the table, Harold pretends not to hear when her mother asks about the conversation with Kim. Ignoring Ken's outburst, Carol starts having breakfast. After finishing, she heads to the door to go out. When Mom asks where she is going, she happily says she is going to see Hams. She hurriedly left, although Mom asked her not to do that. The lively girl hurries through the village. People greet her and notice her energy. One seller gave her fruits, and another asked about her parents. She suddenly stops in front of a huge curtain wall. Carol looks at the village's protective wall and notices how it always seems massive. Then she sees Hams and other hunters near the city gates, well-armed and tired. She runs to the surprised hunters and hugs him. He tells her that today it is not allowed to go outside, and when she asks why, he answers that it is a special day. She notes that there are no other children on the streets except her. Noticing this and seeing that the worn-out hunters are preparing, she asks the scams if he and the rest built the wall. Hams tells her that many years ago there was a great war in this area, and this place was an important fortress. After the war, refugees settled in the empty fortifications and began to prosper, creating a city. Carol, not quite understanding, asks if the walls protect everyone from all enemies. But their conversation is interrupted by Leela, out of breath and happy, who grabs her daughter who ran away and takes her away. Another hunter asks Hams something. A warrior comrade asks Hams if he knows them. And he says that these are his neighbors nearby, who are very kind to him and his little sister, both wanderers. The soldier notes that they are not scared at all, and Hams says that the walls have never been destroyed since the founding of the city. Layla apologizes for interrupting Carol and promises to teach her a lesson later, but Han advises to be gentler with her. Carol, as he says, she will see him again soon. And Hams waves in response until she leaves. Hams lowers his hand and gloomily wonders if there will be a later time at all. Noticing the bustling village around him, Carol asks her mother if there is some festival today while Layla knits. Looking out the window, Layla says it would be nice if it were a festival. Then he comes to life and suggests arranging a banquet. Marwan is dead, Carol is happy, and her parents smile. Completely unsuspecting, Carol continues to play while the peasants bustle outside. Looking out the window, Russ tells his wife that he has already loaded the cart with everything they might need. Just in case the situation worsens, he hopes it won't come to that, and that all their efforts to prepare the town will prove unnecessary. Holding his hands tightly, he silently prays for safety and hopes they will get through the day unharmed and greet the morning as usual. That night, the warriors release a hail of arrows at the wave of monsters approaching the town. The approaching horde of creatures loses many to the arrows, and the brave defenders of the town are stunned to see over 20 monsters advancing together. They have never faced such numbers before, and it is clear that different groups have united for this attack. The gate commander orders to strengthen the defense, hoping the enemy will be exhausted against the strong doors and will not break through. Outside the walls, monsters scratch at the gates of the iron fortification and relentlessly strike them. Suddenly, one monster falls dead, pierced by a spear from above. Where Ham stands ready on the wall. In one hand, he holds a handful of throwing weapons, and in the other hand, another spear. The warriors, like Hams, are determined not to let the creatures in at any cost. Then behind the goblins appears a huge beast. A green creature jumps on it. They grab him and throw him against the wall. Pushed the man aside, knocked his legs out, and fell inside the tent. Fell down when the warriors realized the danger. More monsters are thrown over the walls, pass by the sparse defenders, and take them from behind. Hands cannot believe how it all came to this, as the creatures mercilessly advance and break through the gates. The peasants scream in horror and run deeper into the city to save themselves. In their house, Russ and his family huddle closely. The parents beg God to save at least their daughter Carol. Russ screams while something hits their boarded-up doors, and they do not collapse inside. And Bloody Hands enters inside with his sister. Hans' sister Alila checks if everything is all right with the family, and they see the warrior with relief. Alila asks if Gams and his sister are also okay, and he says that the blood on him is from monsters, and the blood of his sister Kim is from the people she treated. While Kim is bandaging Hans' wounds, Ruz asks how the fight is going. And Gams begins to say that everything looks bad, and then openly admits that it is a hopeless case. The gate is breached, a stream of monsters is covering the city, most fit defenders have already died. Gems left the front line feeling hopeless, and doubted whether he could even tell this to his sister and the Russ family. He tells them that now it is not in their power, and insists that they flee immediately. Seeing the frightened family, Russ steps forward and tells Gams that they have already loaded many supplies onto the cart just in case, urging them to move. The group goes to the stable, and Gans watches out for danger. When everyone sits on the cart, the bracelets and legs already know that it is time to go. But then he sees two goblins coming towards them, and they have already been noticed. Gan orders Roos to get on the cart and rushes forward, ready to eliminate creatures with one swift move. He swings the long sword downward, but the goblin dodges and strikes back. Gan chops again and delivers a fatal blow. When the monster is dead, Gams tells Russ to move and jumps onto the cart as the merchant rushes past the chaos. Gams informs the rooftops that the town gates are blocked, but the collapsed section of the northwest wall might provide an escape route. Russ nods, then looks ahead and begins to cry. When he sees the city in flames, monsters attack defenseless peasants, kill them, and black dogs eat the bodies. Covering his mouth in shock, Russ hears desperate cries for help from a neighbor as chaos continues. Next to Russ, Gams kills a goblin on a boar and points to a breach in the wall ahead. Kramer passes the visa through the gap and escapes into the forbidden forest. The city is lost and monsters burn everything. Carol's book of fairy tales turns to ashes in her former home. Sion in the fast carriage. Carol asks her mother if they will ever be able to return. Layla cautiously tells Carol that they might return someday, but new adventures await them elsewhere. Kem cheerfully insists that they survived thanks to God's protection, and that the god of fate guides them. Meanwhile, the courier brings a package from the village of Doli to Yashio's house, for which the young man signs. In the story, the Hama troops engaged in battle, revealing his weak spear strike. Gans tells Ruth that his attack wouldn't even scratch a monster, and the worried seller agrees to this, still determined. Yashio watches as his Gans kneel down, and says that Ruse is unfit for battle. He suggests Russ support him and Moss from the rear, rather than going to the front line. At first, Russ admits that he thought only strength mattered, apologizes to Gems for wasting his time, and says he crossed the line, and later Yashio says that Gems is tough on Russ. After dinner, Russ looks depressed. Leela asks Gems to gather fruits during the patrol because they almost ran out. Green Gans interests Carol when she offers to help. Explains that since arrival, she has been stuck in the cave. Russ warns her that monsters become aggressive when the influence of evil gods approaches, and it becomes more dangerous outside. Carol brushes off the danger and says her feet are sacred. But the objects settle. She insists that she will gather many tasty fruits, because of which Russ hits the table and says that it is too dangerous and demands that she listen. The room becomes quiet. Lyle looks anxious. Kem and Gems lower their eyes and Muse stays aside. Carol cries in tears while Layla talks to Russ. He realizes his mistake too late. Harold, crying, shouts that she hates tricks and locks herself in her room. Yashio, seeing everything, notes that Ruse is under enormous pressure. Russ tries to inspire the peasants with a prophecy, but it is not enough to solve their problems. With offerings, Yashio's fate points have grown to 214, and he thinks whether to use a miracle, for example, to summon hunters for 3 days, but fears that it will not fully strengthen his group, even if he tries. Yashio considers the hunters savages who can harm the peasants and deprive them of everything. He imagines 3 hunters capturing the cave, and thinks that in a normal game he would worry about a trifle, but here he sees summoning a ghoul as the perfect solution. He dreams of using gold to help the peasants and cope with any surprises. However, he doubts that he will manage to gather the necessary 700 points in time and knows that it will be difficult over the next 10 days. He briefly thinks about asking his parents for money, but quickly realizes that he will be kicked out if he spends the borrowed money on the game, and there is no point in arguing. Borrowing from his younger sister seems even less likely. He thinks about selling the peasants' gifts, but hesitates because he is not sure if they are valuable and if he can sell them quickly to get money. Seeing Yashio get stuck in a dead end, leaning over the table, then looks up and gets an idea and takes his laptop to look for side jobs. For most, this is an obvious decision, but he has never worked before. Once he came to a university interview but got so nervous that he failed. It happened not only because of nerves. He was picky and looking for a high-paying job, then he only wanted a position with a good salary and benefits package. It was a lesson he should have learned. Even later, he repeated the same mistake, applied to a large company that only took the best graduates and predictably failed. His father intervened and through his connections got recommendations for him. But Yashio still made a mistake and embarrassed his father. In his heart, he naively thought that failing the interview would completely free him from work. After 10 years, he decides to try again, even for a part-time job. He was already thinking of going to work, but feels miserable, considers himself too old to be so spoiled, and is afraid to try and fail again. Past failures haunt him, and he is afraid to let others down. He is ready to overcome fear and try. While browsing job vacancies, he realizes that people might laugh if they found out he needs a job just for the sake of the game. But he believes that if he does not act now, he will be stuck forever. If he cannot help the villagers with work, it means he is doing everything wrong. A short-term job for a month would be the best option to earn the needed money. A job in a store would take months, which is too long. He hardly communicates with people outside the family, so working with customers seems impossible. There is also the option of physical day labor, but he doubts he is strong enough. There are few short-term gigs nearby, and without a driver's license or motorcycle, he has even fewer options. If he does nothing, even job searching becomes difficult. On his screen, he sees how Russ cannot apologize to his daughter, who deflects the anger. When Yashio's wife, seeing how upset he was, gently asked him to give her some space, Yashio pulled himself together. He gets dressed and says he will help everyone he can. He sits on the bicycle and goes to look for job vacancies in free magazines, forcing himself not to stop. Later, he returns home, and his mother is shocked that he went out. She smiles, noticing the job vacancy magazine he is holding, and warmly welcomes him. Returning to his room, he continued browsing job advertisements until he went to bed. His mother calls that dinner is ready. When he goes downstairs, he is surprised to see his whole family at the table. Yashio is stunned to see his sister there. But when she responds, he gladly welcomes her home, and this surprises her. While they eat, Saki notices that dinner is more festive than usual and asks her mother if something good happened, and her mother happily says that Yashio wants to find a job, which makes him choke with surprise. His sister says that he finally became persistent, but Yashio explains that it is only a part-time job at the start because he needs money. His father looks at him and says that the reason does not matter. What matters is that he shows determination. Yashio was surprised because he thought his father would push him to work full-time. Calling him his older brother, Saki notices that he has been different lately and asks if he has a girlfriend, but his mother waved it off, saying he is not very liked by people, and he felt embarrassed by her remark. He notices that his sister called him Big Brother. His father wonders if the change in his attitude is related to the fact that he sends goods to the village. Yashio admits that although he helped revive the village, it was not right for him to keep taking without giving anything back, so he decided to help somehow. Yuki looks around, puzzled, realizing she is the only one who knows nothing, but her mother jokingly scolds her for talking during dinner and promises to tell her everything later. Sitting on the porch, Yashio is approached by his father, who asks if he has already settled into a job. He says he found 3 options and plans to call him tomorrow. His father asks if it is only temporary work, and Yashio explains that at the end of the month there are urgent matters in the village, so he can start any time before that. His father says he is already ready to intervene. Like before when he was angry and postponed matters. He asks if there are any other conditions, and Yashio admits that he does not think he can work with clients, so he leans toward physical labor because such work is easier to find. His father suggests asking a friend for help. Yashio is stunned and grateful, but worried because he has to rely on his father and risks failing again. His dad and sister will always be his family, regardless of age, and there is no shame in that. He adds that if a child receives support from parents, it is normal, and if Yashio wants to achieve something, he should use all available resources, including family, because it is part of growing up. For some reason, Yasha imagines Russ and his father. Remembering how the shopkeeper often asked his daughter to lean on him. Wondering if his dad does the same, he bows and asks for help. The father returns to call his friend. Yashio trembles with nerves and has nowhere to run. The father talks to the friend and asks if he can come to work in comfortable clothes. When that is settled, he tells his son Yashio to be ready in half an hour. Yashio shaves his beard and puts on a jersey and is afraid again to let his father down. He blames himself for weak will and looks at the screen. In the village, Russ sighs irritably and asks his wife if he can help with anything. She says that Carol already decided everything today and says that since their arrival, Carol has been actively helping everyone. She adds that the children grow up so fast and notices that Russ has left. He hurried to Carol and begins to say sorry, but she also apologizes, explaining that people told her that he values her very much and is upset only because he wants to protect her. Russ feels awkward when she promises not to ask for permission to go outside anymore. He got on his knees, touched her cheek, and admitted that he was wrong. He confesses that out of fear of the worst, he forgot that they decided to live together in this new place and cannot hide forever. Calling her a wonderful part of the village, Russ tells his daughter that he trusts her and allows her to do as she wishes, making her smile while others watch. Yoshi gets up from his chair. Gold lifts his face and smiles. Thanked the villagers for having given him courage earlier, for saying he would return and leaving his room. Going downstairs, the villagers applaud. His father goes to a new job. Yashio asks what this job is about, and his father explains the duty of cleaning because the night shift at his friend's supermarket is understaffed after a part-timer quit. He is glad that Yashio fits in, although Yashio is not sure if cleaning will suit him. In a small supermarket, a bearded man warmly welcomes Yashio and his father. The man in the work overalls calls Yashio a savior, happily patting him on the shoulder and saying that he heard Yashio was a recluse, but sees that he is strong. Yashio. I hope they get along well. Yashio's father leaves, and Yashio almost reaches out but stops. He understands that he is no longer a child and now has a job. His new boss leads him inside and reassures him, saying that he just needs to follow instructions. The boss adds that Yashio can ask him or 2 other workers, a man and a woman, to help if he gets confused or stuck, then introduce them to Yashio, warning not to tease him or touch him. Both joke and greet him, and Yashio even notices that they get along with people much better than he does. He is nobody, just an ordinary beginner, so he decides to drop useless pride, accept his inexperience, and try his best without boasting. He politely greets the new colleagues and hopes that they will get along. After the first shift, Yashio's boss gives him a ride home and asks if he can come back tomorrow. He explains that the second shift is late, and he will pick up Yashio at 8 in the evening. Colleagues praise him for his efforts that day and say goodbye cheerfully before the van leaves. Happy Yashio enters his home. So by that time, everyone is already asleep. Everyone was friendly and kind, so he kept calm and completed all his tasks. It's like sucking dirty, soapy water with a large vacuum cleaner that can handle liquid and gravel, plus moving things. and cleans the tools after work. After finishing work, Yashio thinks that the manager misunderstood him and gave him the simplest tasks. Tired and covered in dirt after a hard night, he wants to take a bath, but before that he goes to the kitchen to drink. Turning on the light, he was surprised because there was a plate of food on the table and a note from his mother with greetings, greeting him and insisting that he eat. Smiling, Yashio sits down. He removes the plastic wrap and takes a bite, enjoying the tasty ani. Yashio notices that the food tastes even better after a long, stressful day. Silently thanked his mother for the food. Climbing upstairs, he wonders why he was once afraid to work. Note that it is warm in the bathroom. The hot water is ready. He understands that his mother carefully cleaned and prepared the bath for him. Grateful, he relaxes in the bath. When the clock approaches 3:30, he sits at the monitor to check on the residents, finding that most of them are sleeping. Seeing the quiet village where everyone is resting in their rooms, Yashio says aloud that their daily hard work inspired him not to stop. When he saw them working tirelessly, it gave him the strength to keep going. He goes to sleep, wishing them all sweet dreams. The next morning, Yashio wakes up with a backache. His side hurts especially, and he worries whether he will manage the work that evening. Entering the kitchen, his she greets him and offers to heat up his lunch. Yoshi refuses her help and insists that he will heat up the lunch himself while they sit together. Mom asked about his job, and he said that everyone was kind and the work was easy. He added that he had to go there again that night. And she is glad to see that he is trying so hard. Embarrassed, Yashio changes the subject and thanks her for last night's dinner and for making such an effort, and she teases him, saying he has become obedient. He thanks her again, and she says that a new package from the village has arrived for him. Yashio carries it upstairs and, judging by the size, assumes it is from Carol. Opening it, he realizes that it belongs to her and happily pulls out a clod of earth. Although peasants think they can contribute only once a day, in reality they can do it twice. But Carol copies adults and sends things at random, allowing each only one gift. She often gives him strange or beautiful stones. Carol collects them on the riverbank and also sends small white flowers and shiny Dorodango balls made of mud. Lately, she copies the wooden statue of the god of fate hams and carefully carves her own figures the size of a pawn from wooden blocks. She sends them regularly, and with each one her skill grows, the details becoming increasingly finer. Watching her cut with a knife still makes Yashio nervous. When she finishes her last work and shows it to the thoughtful mouse, Carol interrupts Moss's quiet moment to show her new statue. The doctor smiles, recognizing in him the god of fate. Yoshi carefully places his lump of dirt next to the other gifts. For Carol and for him, these are treasures, although to others they seem worthless. They were sent from the game world, and he wonders whether they were made by a company worker or by Carol herself. Although he knows it cannot be true, he still likes to imagine that they are from her. Yashio, exhausted but thoughtful, goes to sleep hoping the muscle pain will pass. He wonders how Carol's messages, though strange to others, still get through, and he is grateful that his mother enjoys his work and he himself values earning by helping people. That evening, his boss says that Yashio is adapting well to the new job. Advised him to relax because the master, it is impossible to do everything in just 2 days. The manager assures him that the employees are good people and says that another guy may seem arrogant, but in reality, he is a dedicated worker. Yashio agrees because he remembered that at first he misjudged the guy's attitude, but now he recognizes his skill and speed at work and decides not to judge hastily. The manager emphasizes that the most important thing is diligence and praises Yashio as an excellent worker, which makes him grateful. When the manager jokes with the staff, Yashio feels a warm atmosphere at work and is confident that he can give his all here, especially because this is his first job after returning home. There is almost a week left until the temptation of the evil god, and he decided to stay motivated for the sake of the villager. He had little time to play, so he reviews the journal of today's conversations. After reading this, he imagines Kim insisting that hands take a break. Only Carol suggested sleeping together, and a playful argument ensued while Hams was leaving. Next, Roost tells Lil if on the mouse, teaches him to make antidotes. although he is not yet sure of their effectiveness. Not knowing how to fight like Hams or the doctor, Russ thinks about how else he can help. Prompt Lauto Hukem and call him extremely reliable. Yoshi admires that the peasants keep hope, although they are threatened by the temptation from the evil god. But when he reads further, he does not believe what he read, and his eyes widen. A mysterious voice reports about the peasants, calls them safe refugees who pose little threat, and promises to continue watching them. The voice hints that they may perish due to the temptation of evil gods, like humans and dwarves before them, although the speaker's name is not listed among the peasants. They worry whether the village has the blessing of the god of fate, noting that actions against them may provoke the wrath of God. The voice advises caution and suggests letting nature deal with those who have invaded their holy land. And stunned Yoshi realizes that Moss is a spy. She remembers that she has to prepare the next dish for them. The discovery that Moss is a spy shocks Yoshi O'Reilly. He trusted Moss as a reliable doctor, but now understands why the game treats him as a guest, not an ally. From the conversation, Yashio learns that the majority belong to a forest tribe that is wary of the peasants' arrival. However, knowing about the divine protection of the village from the god of fate, the majority did not dare to act directly against it. Yashio notices this divine grace in the game world, which complicates the tribe's vigilance and restrains them from intervening. Fate learned that he could be useful to the peasants and is pleased by this. But he knows that if Moss does not help in battle, Hams will be the only one able to oppose the monster during the temptation of the evil god. He is unsure of his next step, but since it is already late, he decides to share the prophecy the next day, hinting that he knows Moss's true identity. Immediately after waking, he plans to warn Moss to reconsider his actions and not do anything strange. The next morning, while the peasants and the majority were having breakfast together, Yashio proclaims his last divine prophecy. Kim is captivated by her shining Bible, announces that they have received the message of the day. Yashio apologizes for interrupting their meal, explains that it is urgent, and urges them to resist the temptation of the evil god. He promises to help a little with his special abilities, and that should be good, confident that they are safe under his divine protection, concluding the prophecy with a reminder that anyone who threatens them will face his judgment. This warning made Moss nervously look around, but he shrugged it off when Kim mentioned it. Yashio sees that the mouse truly fears the god of faith and power. Han says that they can survive with God's help, but adds that they still need to try hard, because God does not like laziness. His words impressed Yashio, and the young man feels that he temporarily prevented the mouse from intervening. So he focuses on their fighting strength. Yoshi decides that he will have to rely on the golem. I like the idea of joining forces with Hams and fighting, using a target he can control. For this to happen, he needs to work for another week and earn 350 fate points, which he lacks to buy it. That night he is taken to work again, and when he gets into the van, he sees that Yamamoto, another worker, is not present. The woman explains that Yamamoto was feeling unwell and took a day off. The boss says that the three of them will clean the store tonight, which is smaller than usual, so they will finish earlier. The boss says that Yashio was very helpful by joining them. He returned home earlier than expected. Yashio finds his parents in the kitchen. His mother complains that he did not tell her he would come earlier to eat together. But he says that work started in the evening, and when they finish depends on how quickly the cleaning goes. She sighs again, but then happily warms up food for him and says she is glad he is here. He noticed that his mother is unusually cheerful. Yashio wants to ask his father why, but shyness prevents him from speaking. He wanted to break the silence and thank his father for the work. He hesitates, and just then his mother says that the food is ready. During the meal, Yashio feels that his mother is waiting for him to ask what happened, and this pressures him. He finally asks. When she begins to mention something about his father, the embarrassed man interrupts her. His father quickly says that her favorite show is already starting, and this surprises Yashio. Later in his room, Yashio feels exhausted. He thought that the fact that the boss relies on him might have made him too zealous. Yawning, he thought he would fall asleep immediately, and he lay down. But first he decides to check on how the peasants are doing. He sees that Carol is sound asleep. Meanwhile, Hams and Kim are getting ready to go to bed. And Ruse and others are doing the same. Layla seems about to get close to someone in the kitchen. While Muse lies in bed and looks at the ceiling, he decided to stay in the cave. Yuusha wonders what the doctor thinks, suspecting that he might just be observing whether the peasant's advantage will strengthen against the temptation of the evil god. Since the peasants feel safer when he is nearby, Yoshi decides that he cannot simply drive him away and will instead watch him closely. Although it is still quite early, Josiah notices that he has not felt drowsy during any task for a long time. Planning to rest a bit to avoid accidentally dozing off, Yashio notices a button with real kanji. He recalls what happened when he pressed the sleep bubble over hams and decides to press this real button before sleep. As he expects, the screen slides completely, and he is stunned when he sees the modern house. Zooming in on the image, he examines different parts of the house until the room layout becomes familiar. Suddenly, he realizes that he sees his own house and cannot fully comprehend what is happening. I cannot understand how to return to the original game, Yoshi. Shio accidentally looks into the bathroom and sees his sister washing herself with a washcloth, wishing for her breasts to grow a little. He thinks that she would kill him if it were real. He calmed himself with the thought that it was just a dream and that he probably fell asleep while playing Village of Fate. Next, he notices his parents in the living room and decides that he can eavesdrop on their conversation because it is only a dream. His father asks his mother not to mention it to Yashio. She says there is nothing wrong with it. She explains that Yashio gave her a gift for their wedding anniversary for the first time in many years, and she wants to show it. Yashio did not know that today was their anniversary because he thought the child would be uncomfortable seeing the parents getting close. His father says he is glad she liked the gift and apologizes for being distant for the last 10 years. His mother notices that he has not smiled since that day and thinks that something is bothering him, and Yashio's face fills with sadness when the father admits that it is true. The words struck him like a sharp pain, even if it was only a dream. Looking back, he remembers that he was much more relaxed until he became neat. And although he still spoke little, he gave himself fully in everything. One time he even pulled a muscle, overexerting himself in the father and son relay. When Yashio got confused with the notes, Dad would come over and simply explain, and when Mom scolded him and he cried, Dad quietly slipped him ice cream and stayed with him until he felt better. Yashio does not understand why he forgot these precious moments. He always considered his father strict and distant. He did not want to admit his own role in the destruction of the family, so he twisted his memories to protect himself, without even realizing it. Those distorted thoughts haunted him, even when he was still in trouble. With frustration and regret, Yashio hits the table. But his mother says that now he has a job and he seems happier. Father agrees, adding with relief that since that day, he always wanted to apologize to him. Yashio is stunned. He knows he himself has reasons to apologize, but does not understand why his father should apologize to him. His mother understands that he is talking about their old quarrel, which he never let go. Then he shouted at Yashio, saying that he was not trying hard enough and that anyone who really wants it can find a job. Yashio was stunned because he believed he was making a real effort. His mother Jiggles noted that these words did not fit the relaxed image of her husband during his student years, because she remembered him as a partygoer who was so lazy that he barely finished his studies. Yashio found it hard to imagine his strict father as that carefree student. The man himself admitted it, though it seemed absurd in a dream. That if his younger self existed now, he would be worse off than Yashio. Back. By that time, the labor market had become lenient. Companies were practically begging for workers. He admitted that Yashio was a more diligent student than he had ever been, and sincerely tried to find a job. However, he, who had just been idle, ignored his shortcomings and Yashio's lecture, although there was no basis to judge. His voice trembled as he spoke, and he confessed that he tried to be a good father and sincerely loved, but bore a burden heavier than he could bear. The thought that he had become decent and now preached Teosio, ignoring his past, made him feel like a terrible person. He himself never studied well and did not like it when his mother pressured him, so he did not force his children to study. He realized that he had changed little compared to her. Yashio cried and, sobbing, insisted that he was wrong. Despite his father's past, he admired him because his father always seemed devoted. Trying not to fall behind his hardworking father, who always worked to the fullest, Yashio felt inspired. His mother took his father's hands and said that he was wonderful then and now, prompting him to ease the burden on his shoulders. They were good adults with adult children, but the parents were just older people with a bit more experience and were not perfect. Wiping his eyes, Yashio's father admitted that he considered adults to be decent people. His wife suggested that they show themselves as those who are still growing. Like their sons who aspired to become better, they too had to constantly change. When his parents gently held hands, Yashio cried with relief. He knew it was a dream, but was glad that his parents' view of adulthood matched his. They looked dignified, but the burdens were too heavy for them. He felt lighter at heart. The next morning, Yashio woke up at his computer, smiling when you realized it was a dream, and you felt good. When he was descending the stairs, he felt that now he could openly talk with his parents, as always. He warmly greeted his family. Later, Yashio ran down the street. Out of breath, it was November 30, the day of the temptation of the evil god, 132 a.m. He hurried to his computer, wondering how everything had come to this. 2 days earlier, November 28, all of you. Yashio did not take his eyes off the monitor. Watching the villagers during their usual tasks, they decided to carefully monitor them until the start of work. Everyone was diligently preparing for the temptation of the evil god. The girls gathered food and supplies, and the gates and roofs made the defense stronger, and the villagers rebuilt the fence, closed the gaps, reinforced it, and set up a simple platform as a tower for better viewing inside the walls. At the top stood a low watchtower that carefully surveyed the surroundings. He moved with a spider-like motion and aimed at the black dog that was sneaking up to the legs and Russ, who were engaged in repairing the walls. The beast growled bushes, trembled preparing to pounce. Sensing danger, the doctor quickly drew the bow and released an arrow. The arrow hit the dog's throat. Yashio noticed the precision of the action. The watchtower suits him because he sees what just happened. Russ gestures to thank Moss for the quick help, and Moss warmly replies that the doctor is still living in the cave. However, Yashio thinks about when the doctor might leave, doubting that he also intends to endure the temptation of the evil gods along with them. He believes that the doctor will probably flee during the chaos caused by monster attacks. The temptation of the evil god is Yashi's first major raid, and although in most games with simpler settings, such an event is usually a simple introduction, here it is not. Yashin knows that the Village of Fate is not ordinary at all. It is a harsh game where mistakes are not forgiven. Seeing their efforts, Yashio is glad that the peasants are actively strengthening their defense. If he somehow fails this game, the young man easily imagines losing a lot of motivation and becoming withdrawn again. Something he is determined to prevent. The development of the village is important, but Yashio does not want his personal growth to stop. He currently has 540 fake points. He can increase this by adding his daily earnings from his side job. Adding a little, he will reach 700 points, enough to achieve the goal when summoning the miracle. If he succeeds after obtaining monster parts, he will offer the peasants his reliable support option. The biggest advantage is that he can manage it himself. Not to brag, but Yashio says that in the last 10 years he has played many games, from Tetris to Street Fighter and first-person shooters, so he feels confident with any control systems. His shift today ends late, and he needs to prepare carefully for tomorrow's temptation of the evil god. When darkness falls on the village, Kem takes care of the altar, while Gan sharpens his weapon. Carol approaches the warrior, touching his sleeve, and asks if everything will be all right, and Hans smiles and assures her that their strength and defense will hold. Even if monsters attack, Carol presses against Jem's hand and jokingly asks him to protect her, which causes jealousy and tension behind them. The priestess scolds Carol, waving her hands, and says that Jem is her older brother. Not Carol's brother, because Carol calls her a stepsister during a conversation with Jem. Dismissing this, Ken turns attention to the main point, asks to check readiness, and wonders if they have enough strength to withstand a stronger assault. They prepare for the approaching attack, and Rose recalls the fate of their last village. He lowered his eyes, and silence fell in the cave. The silence must be broken. Since this is a forbidden forest, it is a risky area where various monsters dwell. He adds that he avoids this during the temptation of the evil god and apologizes for what might happen. Ken replies that his help has been quite sufficient so far. She says that Mouse has already helped a lot. At first glance, Yoshi might consider him a good and reliable doctor if he did not know the truth about him. Ham says that even if they wanted to escape, the wheels of the Wayons are almost broken, and they do not know how to fix them, so going out of the forest on foot is also not an option. Muse agrees, says that he and Hams might manage on their own, but with the full group he would not bet on it. When Gantz hears this, he proudly stands up. Clenching his fist, he resolutely says that they will find a way to defeat the monster, because it is their only chance to survive. He promises to give all his strength and unite everyone to survive together. Almost everyone looks filled with new hope, and Yashio quietly praises Hams for being reliable. Then the warrior enters into battle with Moss. Bowing deeply to thank for all the help, he said that he partly hopes that Moss will join the fight. He respects that it is not his decision. Misha was stunned by this sincere gratitude, and even more so when the other villagers also bowed to him. Yashio feels that everyone knew that Misha might one day lead the village. The doctor asks them to raise their heads and says that he should have spoken first. He admits that he wants to help them all, but reveals he had a family and someone special waiting for him, so he had already decided to leave that night. Most were also planning to leave the village that evening, and he left some herbs he had prepared for them so they could use them as needed. Carol approaches the doctor and asks if he is really going to leave, and he says sorry, gently stroking her hair. She smiles and tells him to come back to play again. Yashia still could not understand the true nature of Mao, but believes that he is not a bad person. Mess, by order of his village, watched over the villagers, but that did not mean he was fully devoted to this role, even if he could not join their battle. Yoshi hopes that Moss does not have bad feelings towards the village. He leans back and stretches, then realizes that it is almost time for work, so he goes down the stairs, promising to return later. Yashio diligently cleans the supermarket together with his team, pushes a heavy commercial vacuum cleaner, which becomes heavier as it sucks up spills on the floor. His boss operates the polishing machine. Misaki scrapes off sticky liquids for Yoshi. Vacuuming, and Yamamoto washes and polishes the floor. During the break, Yamamoto talks with Yashio and takes a bottle of milk tea. Shy Yashio tries to respond well in a short conversation with Nick, although he is embarrassed by how it goes. Yamamoto advises speaking casually. When Yashio says that he is older, Yamamoto agrees that changing abruptly is difficult and says he will wait until Yashio is ready, then focuses on a mobile game, recalling the daily free gacha. Yoshi notices that Yamamoto is an avid gamer who has all possible console games and goes to cybercafes weekly for tournaments. The man asks if Yoshi will play games on the smartphone, and Yashio admits that as a homebody he did not have one, so the computer is better in such a situation. Surprisingly, Yamamoto remains friendly after learning that Yashio was a shuden, and even calmly says that he had a second phase of shuden. This openness changes Yashio's attitude towards Yamamoto. When asked about games, Yamamoto begins to describe a game with stunning graphics that he loved very much. Until he cannot remember its name, their boss interrupts and tells them to get back to work. Returning to business, Yashio thinks he will only have time for the Village of Fate. After another night shift, the boss gives him a ride home and says that he will be free for the last 2 days of November. The boss adds that one more shift will be needed during the big cleanup at the end of the year, and Yashio thanks everyone. Waiting for the van to leave, in his room he turns on the monitor and sees that the mouse has left the cave, leaving a neat row of healing mixtures and instructions for use on his nightstand. Graining, a young man, says that the doctor is not so bad, quietly reflecting and hoping that the service will return if the villagers overcome the impending evil. On November 29, during the temptation of God, the tired game takes turns at the top of the tower. While Ayla and Rose anxiously perform their tasks, Kim prays by the altar, feeling the heavy atmosphere, and Yoshi thinks about how he can ease their stress. I am thinking about immediately composing a comforting prophecy. In the prophecy, Kim's Bible begins to shine. The god of fate calls on the peasants to trust his safe actions in this dangerous time, promising to help if real threats appear, and Yashio hopes this will calm them. Thus Yashio believes that the peasants will not rely too much on God, will remain alert, and will be ready to ask Gaon for help. With relief, Kim tells everyone that they are under divine protection, and this lifts the peasants' spirits because hope awakens again. Satisfied, Yashio relaxes and wants to try summoning the Golden One, but does not know how it works or what is needed for it. Therefore, he decides to wait out the crisis, then hesitates whether to sleep or eat. Yashio goes downstairs, prepares strange meat, and for dessert tastes an unusual fruit. Enjoying the taste and noticing that his family has become healthier after eating these gifts. Then the phone rings, and his boss informs him about sudden work. After he was calmed down, the boss explains that Yashio simply has to watch over the villagers that day. When Yashio asks, he learns that the task must be completed by 9 in the evening. Yashio agrees to take on the job, and the boss calls him a savior, noting that Yamet took an unexpected day off. Yashio wonders what happened, assuming that the young man is resting and considering an honest compromise. Later, his boss negotiates with the shop owner about cleaning, insisting on extending the contract for a few more weeks so the work lasts longer. Yashio anxiously looks at the clock at the moment. It is already 9:15 p.m. Although the boss lets him go, Yashio insists on staying until the work is finished, expecting a quick completion. But at 12:37 a.m. he is stuck in traffic. The policeman tells his chief to turn back due to a strong tide caused by the temptation of an evil god. Yashio fears that the monsters may have already attacked and wiped out the villagers. So if he tells the boss, he will go home on foot. Before leaving, say goodbye with a smile. For running away, cursing his gaze when the clock struck 1:23 at night. After the first real run in many years, which was hard for him, Yashio thinks about the villagers. Overcoming the pain, hurrying home against time. Out of breath, he arrives and takes off his shoes, and runs upstairs, calling to check on everyone. He panics, but there are no signs of a monster attack. Gan is still on guard. Another safe and bed. So the sighs and relief of Yashio. And then his sister shouted from the doorway, complaining about his noise. Yashio promises to calm down, but his sister's stares pointed to his sweat and dirty uniform and told him to wash up. Avoiding her gaze, he agrees to wash his face. Although she notices his lie, she reminds him that she has always seen right through him. Lansing sits behind the monitor. Saki notes that he has been logging in late recently and asks if there was some event, saying that their mother told her everything, and Yashio asked her not to turn off the computer. Saki entered the room and now knew what was going on, and Yashio thought about his next move. Remembering the game's warning, he half-truthfully explained to her that he works as a beta tester and cannot talk about game details because he risks his job and a fine. Saki muttered about her clever response, a little annoyed, and suggested monitoring the amplification while he takes a shower. Not wanting to argue and waste time, he agreed. Briefly told her about the upcoming outbreak and asked to be informed of any problems. In the bathroom, Yoshi wanted to rinse quickly but was afraid his sister would notice, so he washed thoroughly. Turning back to the room, he took control of the game again because Saki reported that there were no changes. They casually said that hands also did not move. Seeing the impressive graphics, Yashio worried that the other might suspect something and called the game advanced. Saki noticed that he avoided looking into the eyes, which indicated that he was hiding something, and eventually he confessed. Yashio admitted that he was hiding a secret, but not a bad one. He just could not tell her or their family yet. After a moment, Saki stood up. She called him Big Brother and went to sleep. Alone, Yashio thought about when they last jumped so often and felt that everything could return as before. Focusing on the village, he checked if the monsters had retreated, but found nothing. Although there were still 22 hours left until sunrise, he was exhausted. Yashio Yand noted that despite the power of all the sleepless nights, this one hit the hardest after a hard working day. Since there was no night attack, he thought about taking a nap, but feared that if he fell asleep, problems might arise. Decided to take a break, took a jar of coffee, and met him. His parents are in the kitchen. His mother noticed that he got up early, so he said that he needed to talk to the villagers to prepare. When Yashio returned to the room, his father praised him for his hard work. Returning to the room, Yashio felt relieved to see that nothing had changed, but wondered if the game had overdone the constant vigilance. Checking the villagers, he saw a row of guards taking turns on duty and resting. Warning girl state, Kim prays for strength. Yashio simultaneously hoped for monsters on a calm day. Having dozed off a little, he suddenly woke up in panic, slapped himself in the face, and decided to drink more coffee. Suddenly, you feel a presence from the forest. Gan scanned the area and stepped back. An alarm signal sounds from the watchtower. The event of the temptation of the evil gods began, and Hams grabbed a spear, peering through a hole in the wall to spot 5 black dogs are approaching the village. Yashio remembered their poisonous fangs, doubting that they would get through easily. As they hesitated, he wondered if they would retreat. But one rushed and jumped over the sharp stakes. The monster that jumped was quickly pierced by Hams's spear and shattered, was dead while Yashio rejoiced. The other 4 walls simultaneously rushed forward, jump. Hams pierced the first 2 with spears, while the third slips through, only for it to be cut by the warrior's sword. The last dog bypassed Hams, who drew the second blade. Charged slid, cut it from below, and it rolled lifelessly. The wound was visible. Yashio is delighted, marveling at the incredible strength of the warrior K. He and Carol come out of the cave to encourage him. Hams warns them to stay away, fearing another attack, but Bruce climbs the watchtower, sees no monsters nearby, and thinks they are safe. Now worried AA comes out, asks about the man, leans over the wall and tells him to be careful. Seeing Hams agrees and asks Kim and Carol to help him. The girls gladly agree, jokingly arguing until the warrior says he needs help to carry the bodies of the monsters over the fence. Their excitement turns to concern when Russ appears. To cope with the difficult work, using gams. While the men clean the yard, AA asks the girls to help her in the house. Yashio feels confident that they have stopped the first wave, assuming that they might not even need going to succeed. 4 hours have passed since the beginning of the temptation of the evil gods. After repelling another wave, Gans rests near the tower. And Kim brings water just as black. Dogs and fierce boars attack. The fence that Gams previously made the peasants build proved effective and easily protects them. Unlike the black dogs, you cannot jump over the fence to escape the fierce boars, and the stakes in the palisade are arranged to stop them with a deadly blow against the fence. Gans calmly controls the dogs as they jump over. During the late-day attack, Yashio tracks when each wave arrives and notices that new enemies appear approximately 30 or 60 minutes after the previous ones are defeated, and that groups also come on the hour, which he considers planned events. While Hans only has minor injuries, Yashio worries that even such a strong fighter can get tired if the attacks do not stop. So he plans to add more fighters later if they resist the temptation of the evil god. Meanwhile, Russ is making wall after wall. Food from Carol Lilative to bring to Gems. Yoshi decided to take a break to eat and drink. When he takes a snack and returns to his room, his mother asks if he will join them for dinner, but Yashio says he can't tear himself away from the computer and will eat upstairs. Even when his mother said she was cooking his favorite fried chicken, he still thinks it tastes best fresh and plans to take some later to his room. When evening comes, Russ from the tower notices trouble and warns everyone about a new wave. 4 black dogs and 3 fierce boars. The first mixed attack Yashio has seen. Hans tells Russ to go to the cave, and Russ asks the warrior not to overdo it. Grabbing the spear, Hams insists that victory comes only by giving all one's strength. The Borsis ran through the barbed wall, and 2 dogs jumped over it and were immediately killed. Hams quickly draws his long sword and deals with the 2 remaining dogs. But then there is a rumble, which means that the wall is breaking under the blows of the board. Weakens the defense. Yashio thinks about summoning a golem, but refrains because there are only 5 hours left until the end of the day. Hams roars and takes another spear to meet the boars rushing. Then he sticks it into the ground and uses it as a springboard to jump over the beasts attacking him. The warrior pulled a knight's sword from his belt and skillfully threw it into the boar's skull. Then he grabs another spear. He straightens up and raises the weapon as the last boredom is coming over him, drawing the spear into its head. Yoshi from Cheers, after a perfect victory, boasts that not only Caroline but also men will fall in love with him. Ken Gaze stands by the fence, and Jen suggests closing the hole. Rust quickly intervenes and takes the task upon himself. He tells Hams to rest, a warning that everyone will be doomed if he exhausts himself. Layla orders her daughter to hug the warrior tightly to restrain him, and the girl willingly agrees. Ro asks Kim to take Dring to Nails and asks his wife to help. Yashio nods approvingly, praising Ro as a reliable and decent man. While the night drags on, Hams takes a break. His sister praised and praised. Bruce and his family are fixing the fence. Yashio realizes that the next attack is near, and his eyes widen with fear as he notices something alarming. A large group of over 20 monsters approaches the camp, and Hams, sensing danger, shouts for everyone to retreat into the cave. As they hurry to carry out his order, a message appears on Yashio's screen that this is the last attack, causing him excitement. The final wave brings not only fierce boars and black dogs, but also grotesque humanoids from the beginning of the game. Clicking on them, Yoshi recognizes them as green goblins. One of the goblins begins to chop the stakes that were supposed to hold back the fierce boars, and Yashio notices that it is as intelligent as a human. Behind the wall, Gams prepares with 2 spears when plates and collapses. Monsters burst through the opening, and the fierce boar attacks Gan. He hit him, throwing him back in pain. Watching from the cave's threshold, Kim screams in panic as her brother tries to get up, while the monster is nearby and around him. Ken opens the door and comes out, begging her brother to get up, but Russ grabs her and asks her to calm down. Firmly restraining her, Layla explains that haste will change nothing, while Carol trembles with fear as events spiral out of control, insisting that now is not the time for Yashio to just watch. Yashio activates the summoning target in Miracle, and the screen flashed brightly, momentarily blinding him. When he looks again, he sees that the view has shifted to the eyes of the Golden One and realizes that he now controls the summoned creature. The golem was in the cave, and you remember where the exit is. If you raise the gamepad, a prompt with control elements will appear. He makes the target move and notices that it is holding a sword, and heads toward the cave entrance. There he sees peasants gathered near a smaller open door, turning stunned and confused, feeling that something is approaching from behind. They froze as the golem rushed past, and Yashio promises to save Gans. As Ken rushes past, he looks with amazement and distrust at the godlike figure. The outwardly battered ham stands near the cave entrance, holding a bloodied sword after killing several monsters, and resolutely says he will not let them pass, even if it costs him his life. A green goblin jumped on him from behind. It scratches his throat, but he stabs a knife into the skull of this creature. Another goblin rushes at him from the front. Then, unarmed, the rogue closes his eyes and prepares for the end. Suddenly, he feels something rushing at him. When the warrior opens his eyes, he sees the green goblin's arms being cut off. The creature was thrown back. Surprised, he sees the dark silhouette of a golem in front of him. Yashio asks him to retreat and takes command of the battle. Two black dogs are dining together, but the golem mowed them down with one swift blow. Yashio is delighted and considers it justified to save his fate points to summon the gong. Having studied and memorized the enemy's attack patterns from previous battles, Yashio effortlessly cuts through the approaching monsters. He easily handles them, moving forward. Although he is familiar with the controls, he thinks that a third-person view would make aiming easier because it would allow him to see the character. You notice a button to change the perspective. He presses it and for the first time clearly sees how the golems are formed. Unlike the rough stone figure he imagined, the golem looks just like a human and is dressed in a robe tied at the waist. The golem has bracers on its arms, long hair tied in a ponytail, and holds a blood-covered sword. Yashio notices a clear difference between this form and what he had imagined before. But he feels a strange familiarity, as if he has seen it before. He realizes that the gong was made from that wooden statue. Gams and Kem carved it for the altar, confirming it as the embodiment of the god of fate. Later, the gold remains right by the broken fence, among the corpses of the defeated monsters. Kim helps Sam to stand up, and the villagers look at their savior with simultaneous admiration and fatigue. Yashio's screen flashed a message that the temptation of the evil god had ended, and that day the monsters would no longer attack. He shouts with excitement. Kim, with tears in her eyes, admires the appearance of the golem's gallon and sincerely thanks the deity. Other villagers join her and thank the god of fate for saving them in their hour of need. Carol enthusiastically tells how quickly the statue moved, although Yashio knows this is just a game design, and the villagers lavish praise while their god humiliates him. He decides that he must respond to them, but notices that the golem is not moving and thinks it is a glitch. A message appears on the screen explaining the golem's mechanics. It spends fate points every second, and when they run out, the golem becomes a mob. Shocked by the expenses, Yashio realizes that using the golem for a few seconds consumed thousands of yen, and he hoped to use it regularly for the village's benefit. But now he sees that it is not so simple. The villagers' joy makes him smile. Raising his hands, he declares victory and shouts, "Bonce," pushing himself to feel the moment and planning to tell the villagers that there will be no more attacks that day. The Bible glows and conveys a prophecy to the devout peasants, who rejoice at this news. They together carried the statue of the god of fate back to his altar. Bowing in prayer, Yashio praises their efforts and asks them to rest peacefully. I zoom out to survey the surroundings of the cave. He observes the aftermath of the battle and notices that although it is only a game, the bodies of the slain monsters do not disappear on their own, so someone has to do the cleaning. Cleaning later would be difficult, and he notices an arrow sticking out of the neck of a fierce boar. He smiles, realizing that Moss helped the peasants from afar with his bow. Several days passed, and Yamamoto apologizes to Yashio for suddenly taking a day off last month. Admitting this really helped him, because something unexpected appeared. When they were getting drinks from the vending machine, Yashio calms him and says that on the last day of the month he also had matters to attend to. It turns out he wouldn't have been able to substitute for Yamamoto anyway, because a sudden task appeared just one day before. Satisfied, Yamamoto suggests buying him a drink, and after some thought, Yashio chooses hot milk tea. While the boy brings the drinks, Yashio asks about the sudden problem with Yamamoto. Shyly rubbing his head, he asks him to keep it a secret from their boss. Yashio smiles and guesses it was a date, but Yamamoto admits it was a temporary game event and adds that, like the player himself, Yashio will understand. Yashio awkwardly laughs at the unexpected answer, then indicates he understood and asks if it was some special event. Yashio is not upset. Yamamoto tells more about the profit he depends on, saying there was an unexpected event at the end of the month that he had been preparing for several days. Noticing that it reminds him of his recent experience in the village, Yashio wonders if there is city building in the game and what style it has, and Yamamoto explains that he does not like building or role-playing games. They are boring and without excitement, so he prefers PvP. Yashio feels relieved, thinking to himself that Yamamoto's game is not related to the Village of Faith. Even when he fights to protect it, his enemies are just monsters. He admits he tried PvP games but was not successful in them, and this disappointed Yamamoto. He would say he would suggest a few if Yashio liked them. Sipping hot milk tea, Yamamoto says how nice it is to enjoy such games during a break. Later that night, Yashio sees that they have finished cleaning up the monster bodies and made good progress repairing the fence. He decides to check the chat logs for the day, starting with correspondence between Ruse and Gams, where the merchant insists that the warrior rest due to injuries caused by the temptation of an evil god. No matter how much he has recovered, despite Kim's magic helping him heal, Hams insists that he is responsible for the hardship. He works and does not stop, ignoring chemicals. Please do not worry. Carol pushes the priestess aside and eagerly offers Hams a massage. A conflict arises when Kim tells her not to interfere while she is talking to her brother. When Carol says that Hams would rather talk to her, Kim sharply replies that this is nonsense, and at that moment Leela intervenes to save the warrior, while Yashia smiles, asks the two girls to help Leela, and notes how devoted the villagers are. Although his fate points dropped to 0 after using the golem, thanks to the villagers' gratitude to their god, they rose to almost 100. He plans to send him monster meat from the attack and expects another increase in fate points from their offerings. Satisfied with the progress, he goes downstairs to have dinner with the meat and clear his mind. In the kitchen, Yashio prepares the refrigerator for new products, fries meat in a pan, and eagerly awaits the future. Soki returns home from work after a late workday, and the appetizing aroma fills the air. He also offers to cook some meat for her, and she gladly agrees. Enchanted by the aroma, Yashio quickly returns to the stove, and Sumi hands her a plate with appetizing-looking mysterious meat. Joyful Saki thanks him and jokingly asks for permission to kiss him as a sign of gratitude, which surprises him, so he holds her back and notices something strange. When they sit at the kitchen table, Yoshi notices that Saki smells of alcohol and realizes that she is drunk. They thank for the food and start eating, while Saki enjoys her dish. Yashio noticed that she was late again and asked if she was okay. She assured him that she likes the job and it is simple. But then she looks down, as if worried. Yashio offers to listen if something is wrong, saying that although he is not the best older brother, talking might ease her anxiety. After a minute, Saki admits that lately she feels like someone is watching her. She explains that recently, when she was shopping at the store near home, she felt a man watching her from the aisle. When she looked, he left the store, and although at first she thought it was her imagination, now she is sure he was stalking her. This reminds her of the stalker who was there 10 years ago, who attacked Yashio when he came in. Yoshi admits that he often thinks about that event from the past, especially since Saki started coming home late. She is surprised that he is worried, but he reminds her that he is still her older brother despite his flaws, repeating his current difficulties. Saki says there is no need to say it twice, nervously fusses and looks away. Then she admits that she thought he hated her for being so calm. Yashio calmly replies that he assumes she hated him. He admits it is embarrassing to say, but he felt that she might not have liked him. Soki happily lifts her head, calls him her older brother, and says he behaves more like before, a bit more decent and cooler than usual. Yashio was surprised by her words, and even more so when he saw her shyly looking down. He took it as a sign that she liked that he had changed, and told her to call if she was late so he could pick her up, then took out the smartphone their mother gave them and showed it to Saki. They exchanged numbers, and she asked if she could call him if she got into trouble, to which he agreed, but said he might not be able to help when he was busy or working late. She still thinks about it and asks him not to be as reckless as before, and he promises he won't do that, although Saki remains calm. Yoshi froze. She is very scared inside and decides to retreat. Confident this time he will succeed. Yashio returns home in a van with his cleaning crew after finishing work early, and they say they finished early, while he thoughtfully looks out the window. He tells the boss that they need to stop by the store for something, and we will get out there. The boss drives into the store, and Nisaki and Yamamoto say goodbye as the van drives away. Riding alone to the stop, Yashio notices a woman in business attire returning from work, and several street children drinking and smoking near the trash bins. Cautious but determined, he enters the store near home. While buying groceries, he is troubled by the thought that a sock stalker might be nearby. Knowing how much it stresses his sister. Remembering how he was stabbed, he recalls that he was then taken to the hospital. Fortunately, his body did not suffer lasting damage. He remembered how Saki cried for a long time after the attack. The stalker was sent to a reform school because of the attack, and Yashio and Saki received several letters of apology from him. But the letters were full of empty, predictable words that meant little. Yashio never found out what happened to the attacker after his release, and he did not care. But he wonders why this problem has arisen again right now. Walking home with groceries, he sees a woman trying to pick something up from the ground. And leaning on the sofa, the woman with an injured left leg is being helped up. Reaches for the house keys. When Yashio came closer, he recognized Ja and called her. And offered to take the keys. She thanks him, surprised to see him there. Ja, his childhood friend who lived next door, has known him since they were babies. Their friendship lasted from elementary school to university. After that, she got her dream job at a company, and he became withdrawn. Even when he became withdrawn, in the early years she continued to write him emails and visit his home. He was ashamed of his life at that time, so he never responded to her efforts. This is their first personal meeting in 10 years. After a short pause, she pokes his eye and asks about her leg. She cheerfully explains that she missed a step due to distraction, twisted her ankle, and a colleague gave her a ride home. Yashio warns her to be careful, noticing that she is unexpectedly clumsy. He recalls an incident from their childhood when Sia tried to climb a tree like him and fell, getting hurt. Embarrassed, she tells him not to mention such an old story, and they both laugh. Sakia notices her work uniform and says that she has been working at a cleaning company for almost a month, thanks to her father's recommendation. He begins to feel ashamed of his job at this age. Sia interrupts him and says that it is not a problem at all. She promises to always support him, leaving Yashio surprised and grateful. He notices that she has blushed, apologizes for keeping her talking, and offers her to come inside. However, CS says that she is glad they finally talked after all this time. Thanking him and saying goodbye, she enters her house. When he leaves, Yashio feels that their first conversation in 10 years went well. He hopes that his friend has remained the same for life. Happily walking home, Yashio begins to doubt himself. And he wonders if Ko was just politely adjusting to his level. 10 years have passed since she entered the world, experienced ups and downs, and became a mature woman. He only started working recently, and she has much more life experience. And he feels that there is too great a gap between them to overcome. Lowering his gaze out of shame, he hears Sia calling her home. He quickly turns back to answer her. Yashio's friend blushes when she talks about a new sweets cafe near the station and says that young people gather there, so she feels uncomfortable going there alone, and wants to join her as soon as her foot recovers. Surprisingly, Yashio agrees, says he also likes sweets, and Sia thanks him and promises to send him an email later. Returning home, Yashio wonders if this walk with Sia can be called a date. But he pushes the thought away, telling himself that she just needs someone to go with her. Confused about why Sia chose him, Yashio shook his head and said there was no point in dwelling on foolish thoughts, and the stalker Saki problem was still unresolved. When he enters the kitchen, his mother greets him. She noticed a strange smile on his face. A few days later, on his day off, Yashio relaxes and prepares to play his game all day. He noticed that since the incident at the store, there have been no signs of Saki's pursuer, so he thinks she might have made it up. Also, next Sunday Yashio will go with Sia to the pastry shop as her companion. This is definitely not a date. And he needs to figure out how to handle the next trial, posed by the temptation of the evil god. The last battle showed Golan's great strength, but due to significant flaws, he can only use it as a last resort. Worried that the village's defense relies solely on GAMS, Yashio thinks of using fake points to add more fighters and plans his next move, considering which miracle would suit him best. Suddenly Gams looks down and shudders, and happily greets the doctor. Yashio thinks that joining the peasants would be nice, but he is not sure. Other peasants run out of the cave to greet their friend. Carol hugs the doctor tightly. Looking down, Miss says he is glad to see everyone safe and apologizes for running away alone. Lai interrupts, says he stayed with them only out of kindness, and although they are grateful, they still move on. Russ agrees with his wife and is glad they can reunite. And the relatives perceive it as a sign from God of their faith. Looking at this, Yashio smiles and says that the game has many wonderful features, including that every villager is pleasant. Then Gams thanks Moss for quietly helping them from afar. Yashio thinks that if he noticed the mouse, then the warrior probably did too. The doctor is still looking at the floor and speaks in a quiet, modest tone. Mouse says that is all he could do and apologizes again. Kneels down, says he has no right to ask for anything, but still asks for their help. Embarrassed, Kim Telson raised his head, recalled how he helped them when Hams was poisoned, and even after that asked to be approached with any need. Her brother supports her, saying that good deeds should be repaid. The miss apologizes once again before we leave, combing hair back to show something unexpected. He grows 2 pointed ears, and most recognize that he is not just a doctor who came to their camp, but a representative of the race from the Forbidden Forest. They have been watched since they arrived. Everyone is stunned by this news. And Yashio calls Musa an elf, his voice sharp, his gaze cold. Ken asked the elf if he already knew about the danger of the temptation of evil gods in the forest, which Yashio considers obvious because her dear older brother suffered greatly because of it. Gen admitted that he somewhat suspected the threat, but considered the attack strangely organized, and the monster's behavior had strange traits. Hans agreed and said he felt the same in the last 2 attacks, especially the one that destroyed their village, because although monsters usually rampage under the temptation of an evil god, they could not arrange such planned strikes. Russ Chames adds that during his travels as a merchant, he has never seen such an attack on a village. Next, Hams asks Moss what he wants. Raising his eyes, Muse tells that his village was destroyed because of the temptation of an evil god. Stunning everyone, even Yashio. Muse says that his people lived in the forest for generations, had skills, and were ready to repel monster attacks, but they were defeated anyway. The doctor says that a dying villager told about a huge attack he had never seen before, and this attack was distinguished by the fact that different monsters seemed to attack together as one, which had never happened before. Hams asks Moss if anyone survived, but Muse says that the witness died shortly after that. The whole village perished, but he noticed that the number of bodies did not add up. About 10 children's bodies were missing. This gave hope that they might have been taken to the monster's nest. Yashio finds it hard to imagine how painful and devastating this must have been for the mouse. Seeing his homeland in ruins and being the only one to count the dead must have been a real torment for the mouse. You can turn to us to comfort the distressed elf. Gems insists that if there is even the slightest chance that the children are alive, worrying about them is pointless. He insists that Maz take them there. Kim rushes inside to get weapons, while Riz, Layla, and Carol gather other supplies for the journey. When Gams calms the grateful elf, Yashio cannot help but admire the spirit of his fellow villager. Everyone decided to go help, so Yoshi does not object, although he himself would like to join. He can use the prophecy only once a day, so he believes he must save it for a critical moment, considers other options, but activating the golem would use up his fate points before the golem even reached them, and he quickly rejects the idea of Gams carrying the statue because it would slow them down. Gams then sets out with Moss. He tells the others to stay in the cave, but Kemen hesitates to join. Insists that she is needed to heal any injured children. Her brother warns that it could be risky. The priestess says she knows this and trusts the protection of the God of faith, adds that if they bring the Bible, he will be able to guide them through the prophecies, and Yoshi hands it to Gams, who expresses concern about taking his sister, but any attempt to stop her would be futile. Even if he tried, she would still come. So Carol approaches Gams and gives him a token, a small wooden souvenir from the goddess of fate to remember her. Taking this, Chim says goodbye to the villagers while the search party sets off. Rast and his family promise to watch over the cave and prepare food for their return. Everything is ready, and the group heads into the forest under a clear sky. Most know where the monster's nest is, and it seems nearby. But Yashio feels disappointed. He is stuck and watching, unable to turn back. The group makes their way through thick bushes and overcomes obstacles together, until they come out onto a clearing by a fast stream. Mr. Just a break. Kem greedily drinks from the flask, and Yashio notices that more than an hour has passed since they set off, worrying that the rough path might be too hard for Kim. Muse then tells Gamsu something else about their next step. He is not sure how many monsters are still at the enemy base. Seeing numerous bodies of monsters and villagers scattered around, he believes that in the last attempt, his comrades managed to repel many of them and reduce their numbers. Han says that probably many monsters also did not remain unharmed. The elf explains that of the three main types of monsters in the forest, wild boars and black dogs usually do not let prey go alive, so he suspects that it is the work of the green goblins who have risen, and suggests continuing to go and look for prey. Yoshi realizes that until now he perceived this as a hostage rescue mission, and suddenly began to worry about the safety of the children. He says that in this very realistic game, it is not surprising to come across a harsh scene sooner or later. Yulis raises his hand, giving the group a sign to stop. He put a finger to his lips, asking for silence. They crouch and sneak to the edge of the cliff, noticing a monster nest below. The monster lair consists of several straw huts, and Yashio counted 9 green goblins at a glance. A warning that even having Gams and most of the forces, facing so many enemies at once would be risky. Alpha says that if there was no clear sky, they could have infiltrated and approached the enemy unnoticed. Yashio agrees that clear weather is perfect for a stealth attack, and he wishes it would rain. Remembering the function, he scrolled the mouse and opened the Wonders tab, and in it went to the weather control section. They rejoiced, noticing that the rain hides their footsteps and reduces visibility, so they could attack the monsters in their huts. The god of fate reviews the weather options and understands that the fate points spent depend on the chosen weather. Rubbing his head, he hesitates to use the heavy rain. The anointing has never before tested this feature. When he chooses his miracle, players of Yoshi of C can set a zone where the weather changes. He moves the circle across the screen with the mouse to select an area and changes its size with the mouse wheel. Let's assume that a larger radius costs more fate points. When he clicks, a miracle happens. Heavy rain falls over the village and surrounding lands. As expected, the green goblins hurried to their huts to hide. Remember, the mist says about the favorable time to change the weather. But Kem willingly says that during this, the Bible glowed a little, considering that this aid comes from the god of fate. When it rains outside, Hams believes that now they can set an ambush on the goblin camp. He gives the extra equipment to Kim to travel lighter, and his sister asks him to be careful. Armed only with a dagger, he sets out together with Moss, who does the same. Entering the camp, they split up and walked through puddles. Hams approaches the hut, crouches near the entrance, pauses for a moment to gather himself. He closes his eyes and urges himself on, and slips into the hut with his dagger at the ready. The monsters inside briefly screamed, then fell silent forever. Gan comes out, stained with blood, with a stern expression on his face. The lookout is supposed to come out of another hut. He signals to find out if there were children there. After the mouse shook its head, they decided to move on. While the massacre continues, Yoshi notices that they have hidden, and only finding and saving the children remains. The rain subsides over the now quiet village, and the men confirm their next step. When the group could not find the missing children, they went to an unfamiliar cave, and the Gams went ahead. When he approached the entrance, he suddenly recoiled in surprise and drew his sword. Kim asked what happened, but Muse warned her to step back as huge red cyclopes emerged from the cave, waving a giant mace. Han could not believe his eyes when he saw the fierce creature in such an unexpected place, and the cyclops quickly swung the mace at him, delivered a strong blow that threw him back like a mouse. Kim and Yashio watched anxiously. However, Hans managed to draw his sword. The flat side absorbed most of the blow. Flipping backward, the warrior maintained his balance and met the approaching monster with determination. Moss shot an arrow straight at Cyclops' eye, but the creature's quick reflexes allowed it to easily deflect the arrow aside. Yashio, like the elf, was stunned by how easily the monster deflected the attack and voiced his surprise aloud. When the screen appeared, he wondered how thick the skin of this creature must be. Facts about the red cyclops. Although they are related to the Vidans, these wild, fierce creatures despise green goblins and are hostile to them, possessing enormous strength. Ordinary hunters are no match for them, and these creatures favor human flesh. The monster let out a terrifying roar as it died. Hans and Moss prepared to confront this. Yashio was stunned by the enemy's overwhelming odds and doubted whether two warriors could defeat the red cyclops advancing on Hans. The cyclops raised a mace to deliver a crushing blow, but Hans deftly dodged, firmly grasped the longsword with both hands, and gritting his teeth, rushed forward to cleave the Cyclops' head, but the blade only scratched its tough skin. Watching the fight, Yashio realized that this red Cyclops was the strongest enemy he had ever encountered. Too strong even for Gams and Moss together. So far Gams barely dodged the monster's attacks, but Yashio knew that one direct hit would leave Leda defenseless and doomed. From afar, the worried Kim warned Moss that Gams wouldn't last long at this pace. When ordinary arrows proved useless against the monster and couldn't pierce the Cyclops, the elf took poisonous arrows and pulled a small bottle of family deadly poison from the bag, so potent that no one survived. Miss saw a faint hope for victory if they managed to hit the Cyclops with a poisonous arrow, although he doubted whether his strength was enough to pierce its thick skin. Having no better ideas, Yashio grabbed his head and regretted not insisting that they bring something more effective. He regretted not making them take the wooden statue to the monster's lair, which left them without the help of golems. Now Yashio could either send a prophetic warning or use what he had, namely Massey's poison, the Bible, and the pouch that Hans gave to Kim. He thought about advising the group to flee using the prophecy, but he didn't see how they would survive the red Cyclops, so the most reliable plan seemed to be to abandon Gams and let Kim and Moss escape. Yoshi and Gams tried to run away themselves, distracting the enemy with bright movements and serving as bait. Meanwhile, Yashio, nervously sweating, mutters that they are just NPCs in the game. Dying shouldn't matter much because it's just part of the game rules. If only he could really believe, he wouldn't be so nervous. But then he rejects this idea, insists that everyone must survive, desperately looks for a solution, and says that a game that can't be won isn't worth playing. He reviews the Wonders tab, looks for anything useful, and forms ideas in his head to change their difficult situation. Suddenly, understanding lights up in his eyes that the new plan might work. He quickly types on the keyboard, time passes, the Bible glows brightly in Kim's bag, the priestess takes it out and explains the crisis to the group, and declares that they are granted wisdom from the god of fate. Yashio uses this wisdom and summons a thunderstorm, narrowing its radius as much as he can. While Hams dodges another strike, he leans on a very worn sword. The Cyclops approaches closer and is ready to crush the tired warrior with a raised mace. But Yashio unleashes the storm a little more. Lightning burns the beast, leaving the red Cyclops scorched and dazed. Hams and Yashio look stunned, realizing that the monster is still standing despite the direct hit. Now Mass prepares a poisoned arrow and aims it at the stunned Cyclops. "Open your mouth," the elf makes a flawless shot, and a moment before hitting, Yashio shouts loudly. But the swift Cyclops deflects it with his club, to push Yashio to sarcastically swear before he reveals his plan B. He summons a golem using a small wooden figurine of the god of fate. This figurine, a gift from Carol to Gams, is attached to the arrow next to a small bottle of poison, and when Yashio activates the miracle, the carving comes to life. It breaks free and squeezes the poison in its tiny hand. Galn jumps onto the Cyclops club, then throws itself straight into the mouth and is completely swallowed by the monster, which soon grabs its throat as if choking, while most around watch with tired faces. It was Yashio's cunning tactic. He told the villagers he would summon a storm to strike the red Cyclops, and then they should shoot an arrow into its mouth when it is stunned. He regretted that the arrow alone was not enough, so he had to hide the statue and poison it. The Cyclops continues to scratch its neck, while Gallman pushes a sneaky stick inside, and Yashio angrily says that the game is over for the monster. He used his controller to command the targets and break the vial, poisoning the Cyclops until its eye turned white. It spits blood and falls and breaks. Yashio loudly rejoices in his room, satisfied that his plan worked. Said that he would gladly thank Gams, Moose, and the priestess and have fun with them. His role as a prophet is now complete, so the group goes to the cave to rescue the children. Gam took the lead again and agreed to be the first to check the cave because other enemies might be hiding there. Deal, Miss Non-Sun. Gan sneaks into the cave himself, while the others watch eagerly. After some time, he emerges from the shadows. Although Kim initially greeted him warmly, the moment remained unspoken, and when she fell silent, she noticed her brother's serious expression near the grave, so she and the mouse fell silent and became gloomy, looking down. Gams tells Moss to enter the cage and check, and tells sister Kim to wait outside. Chem objects insist that she is ready for this and that some of them may still be alive. But Gams firmly says that this is his heartless older brother, and he does not want her to see what is in the cave. The priestess stays behind. After some time, the Gams and Moths come out of the cave, their heads bowed, and their faces expressing deep sorrow as they step outside. Mist falls to his knees, overwhelmed with grief. And holding back pain, I think about Cam and Gams and thank them for their support. The warrior asks him to lift his head and regrets that he could not save anyone. Meanwhile, Yuusha wipes tears from his face. It hurts me to see the sorrow of the villagers. His tears flow freely. Kent approaches Musa and asks permission to pray for the deceased. Kem wants the dead to find peace, and the broken elf agrees to pray. Yoshi watches the stage as darkness falls. After the prayer, he sees how all three simply hide the children, unlike usual games where such moments are skipped and their return to the village is shown immediately. The Village of Fate is not an ordinary game. Here life and death are real. Muse, Kim, and Gems briefly linger near the new graves. Then the priestess talks with the elf and asks Moss to return with them to the village for now. And Hans adds that the people there are also worried about him. Most of those standing slowly and gently agree, easing the brothers and sisters. Later that night, Ruse and his family noticed the grim faces of the returning group. Carol hurries to greet them, and Muse hugs her tightly. Gon shook his head, letting Russ know that the children could not be saved. Wild Island tries to use the crying camera, hoping to lift everyone's spirits. Ruz praises them for their efforts, says they are hungry, and goes to prepare food for them. Yashio is still crying and says that they all did everything they could. Layla warmly tells Musa that he can stay with them as long as he needs, and he gratefully agrees. Seeing this, Yashio wonders which mouse he will choose next. He hopes the elf will join them as a friend, but only Most knows his true thoughts. Noticing that he is staring at the floor with a vacant look, Yashio says that if he has to leave and live alone, he will not force him to stay. Yashio hopes that Moss's pain will soon pass, regardless of which path he chooses. Moss stands on the cliff and looks at the forest below with tears in his eyes and an expressionless face. Feeling that life has lost its meaning, the elf steps over the edge and falls down to his death. Yoshi wakes up in a panic. When the sun rises, you realize it was only a dream. He hurried to the computer to check on Musa, and feels relief when he sees him alone in his room. He is safe but anxious. Musa's face shows clear worry, as if he had struggled with dark thoughts all night, and this made Yashio fear the worst, but fortunately it was only his anxiety. During breakfast in the main cave, the group eats together, but Ken says that Mouse has not left his room at all. She wonders if he might be hungry. All games and chemicals remain quiet and restrained. Looking at his wife, Ruse tells his daughter that Masa is absent. The group notices this and decides to stop the conversation and continue eating. Yoshi understands that the mouse will need some time to recover. He wonders if there is a special trick he could do to lift the villagers' spirits. Thinking, he notices a feature called Egg Gacha, which he had not encountered before and chooses to learn more. This option, available once a month, allows him to play the Getcha game for free with a chance to win an even egg, a reptilian egg, a monster egg, or a rare monster egg. After hatching the egg, the creature inside will become a loyal companion to the first person it sees. It can be kept as a pet or raised for food, and carefully select options in Yoshi's Oasis. If you have questions, leave them in the comments below. See you in the next video. If it is a bird, it can be a constant source of meat. If it is a reptile or amphibian, they can be eaten or kept as a pet. If this is a monster, it could be trained for battle, especially if it is rare. He finds this opportunity interesting, and since it costs nothing, the young man decides to try without much thought. As soon as he activates it, the gacha starts spinning, and although he cannot say exactly what he wants, he understands that by appearance he cannot guess what is in the eggs, so he is not worried. When you press the stop button, the gacha slows down and shows a simple white egg, too elongated to come from a chicken. The game informs him that he has won an egg, and it will appear near the village. As expected, the egg appears at the base of a tree just behind the palisade. They wanted to protect the camp and not leave the egg unattended. Yashio decides to inform the villagers of the news through a prophecy. Soon Kim opens the Bible and reads aloud a composed but incomprehensible prophecy. Tell them about A and let them decide its fate themselves. Soon Carol returns to the cave, proudly carrying the aid in her hands to show her parents. Although she suggests preparing it as a dish. Or Mom disagrees, explaining that although the prophecy gives them a choice, this egg is special. She believes it is a divine gift to be honored, and looking at the egg with reverence, Carol seems to understand this. She hurries to the altar of the god of fate, thanks him, and places the egg there. Asking him to watch over the egg. When the egg begins to disappear, Yoshi realizes that this is the same as when someone makes an offering. Horrified to realize that the girl sent him the egg, frightened Layla ran to the altar, knelt before the statue, and apologized for Carol's actions, insisting that she meant no harm. Yashio was surprised by the response and learned that the egg would come to him the next day. He considers it risky to eat it if it is not a chicken egg, so he decides to hatch it and is curious what kind of egg it might be. He searches the internet for different eggs and determines that it most closely resembles a reptile egg. Although he does not know how to handle reptiles, he begins to think that it might be a real monster egg because it comes from the village of fate, not from a usual source. Instead of worrying, he dismisses this idea as absurd. Convincing himself, he thinks it is probably a simple safe lizard or snake that can be kept as a pet, and his only concern is the family's reaction. The next day, Mom says that the package has arrived, and when he checks, he notices that it says on it that there is an animal inside, not raw meat as usual. He opens it and shows it to his mother. It is an egg. Saying that it might be a reptile, she immediately asks if he is going to get a reptile to impress Saki. The fact that the girl was adored might have something to do with this. Yashio and his father both loved reptiles, and this fascination seemed to be a family trait. He learned that his father kept lizards when he was unmarried, and after marriage, he passed the responsibility to his family. Saki, Yashio's sister, also loved reptiles and took care of them in her room, and Yashio was stunned because he did not know about her hobby, as he had avoided her room for almost 10 years. While Mom continued talking, he silently marveled that he had not noticed this unexpected detail about his sister before. Interested in reptiles and wanting to get closer to Saki, Yashio decided in the evening, when she returned home, to ask her for advice on how to care for them. During dinner, he brought it up with she and his father seek advice from them. He explained that the village, as part of a plan to revitalize the area, sent him reptile eggs and offered one to raise too. When he said that Saki and his father love reptiles, they gladly agreed to share advice and additional things with him. After dinner, Saki and his father examined the egg in Yashio's room and noticed that it resembled a reptile and had a strong shell. They guessed which species it belonged to and asked technical questions that Yashio could not answer. Then gathered tools to build a terrarium for reptiles. Soon they finished the setup. Put the egg inside, take some photos, and asked Yashio to inform them when it hatches, encouraging him to record all the details. As they were leaving, Yashio thought how lucky he was to have 2 reptile enthusiasts in the family. He thought it might be a coincidence, but the village fate affair day by day strengthened his family ties. He even wondered if a god of faith could exist outside of him. A few days later, he nervously adjusted his jacket in front of the mirror before going out. Mother teased him because he was going on a date. She was shocked when she realized it was true. Yashio hurried to leave, saying nothing about the girl, and promised to return later. He went to Siz's house. Her leg had now healed. They visited the Sweets Cafe they had talked about. He noticed that this cafe was for couples and was glad that his friend was happy. After several conversations, she admitted that she often talked with his mother to find out how he was. She learned that after helping to revive the village, he had become cheerful again as before, and this interested her, so she asked about his experience, which caused doubts in Yashio. He was worried that if he admitted it was just a game tied to microtransactions he could afford while working, she would lose interest. The game rules forbade him from revealing details, risking his doctor. The doctor, the Lord of Time from Gallifrey, traveling through time and space on the TVDS, could not lie, so he decided to openly share his true feelings. Hiding the game, he described it as a small village with few inhabitants and limited local goods, where wild animals roamed. He said that the village would need time to develop. The people were extremely kind. They created a close-knit community in which everyone had their role. Everyone works hard. He admitted that thoughts about their difficulties inspired him to change something and somehow repay them. She realized how much she cared about the peasants and felt uplifted. They told more about them as they were going home. She thanked him for joining and talking, and he thanked her for paying, despite their playful argument near the counter. Laughing, Yashio offered to pay for the next walk and agreed to meet again soon. Yoshi went to his room and suddenly felt something there. Wondering if it could be someone's presence, Bagu folds the manga and he hurriedly looks around the room, finding nothing, just as he begins to think that he imagined everything. He hears crackling from the reptile egg and turns back just as it begins to hatch. He wonders what will happen when the creature starts to come out of the shell. Yashio is frightened when he sees the egg crack and hastily, panically searches for his sister's notes, but he doesn't manage to find them before the shell breaks apart, and a golden lizard crawls out. When the creature looks at him, the young man froze and felt relief that it was not some strange monster. He watches as it playfully swims in the aquarium, and it suddenly seems cute to him. Thinking that he can take care of it with attention, then he remembers to say, "Take a photo of the lizard and send it to his sister and father." He tries to identify the species of the lizard on the internet, and although he sees some similar ones, none have such a shiny golden color as this one. He tells the lizard to stay calm in the terrarium because he finds it cute, and later that evening, Yashio's mother calls him downstairs for dinner. He goes down the stairs, and the lizard watches him closely. When the young man enters the kitchen, he feels a tense atmosphere. His sister suddenly scolds him for ignoring the phone, even though she already messaged him. He does not understand why she is so upset, recalling that he sent them a photo of the lizard to ask about its species. After he apologized, she points with her finger. It turned out that she wanted him to show her the lizard as soon as she came home. Apologizing during the fight, Yashio promises to bring it to her. Yashio goes after the lizard and returns to the room, but when he opens the door to the main hall, he is surprised to see the lizard right there. I know exactly how it got out of the cage. Grabbing it with his hands, he carries it to his sister. And before she can take it, their mother tells them to return to the table and eat because they are holding up their father. Settling down, she asks them to enjoy the lizard after the meal and first to focus on dinner. When they finished eating, the children and their father go to Yashio's room, carefully look at the lizard, and Saki is impressed by its golden color. She notes that there are no species of golden lizards in Japan, and her father adds that despite the unique color, it is not a big deal. Its sharp scales resemble those of an armadillo lizard. Saki asks her brother if he knows what the lizard eats, and he replies that it previously ate some fruit that the village sent him. His father then asks if he inquired with the villagers about the species of the lizard. But Yashio evades the question and repeats what he already said about the revival of the village. He explains that the initiative brought out a new species through careful selection to create rural features, like a lizard and some strange berry, and asks to keep the lizard a secret and not show photos to anyone. Speaking about food, he says that the villagers ask him to find out what it eats besides fruits and whether it can live in a regular house. After some time, Yashio's family members finally disperse to their rooms, leaving him alone. They usually did not enter his room, even if the door was open. But given the situation, he is sure that now they will often come to look at the lizard, so he considers it wise to turn off the monitor when he is not there. Returning to the village of Doli, he notices that Carol is sleeping peacefully, and Ruse says that Mew are constantly lonely and were only satisfied after the destruction of their village because their family did not perish. Lila agrees and adds that they can only offer small comforts, and Kim comforts his brother, saying that time will ease his pain and hopes he will recover soon. Meanwhile, she tells Gamu about her desire to visit the graves of the children from the village of Ulsi again and pray for them. Gin suggests going together when Memphis feels better. Minus Elf, who is very upset, takes a book out of his backpack and questions the deity he represents. Asks why it abandoned them, although the god of faith helped him. Yashio understands that this must be a sacred text with divine scriptures, and explains that the book contains beliefs that God demands and that his people adhere to. He notes that Kim's unique tone allows him to write in this tone, and another person probably could not, which indicates that divine blessings in this world are rare and considered miracles. Since Mouse himself witnessed a miracle, it is not surprising that he became disillusioned with the gods. Then Yashio realizes that if the villagers are attacked during his absence, he will not be able to help them. Yoshi understands that, like the gods worshipped by the elves, he will not be able to save the village from destruction if it happens while he is working a side job, which he works 3 to 4 days a week. If danger occurs on those days, he will be helpless. He thought about quitting and returning to a reclusive life, but changed his mind because he considered it unwise to give up now that he has a new beginning. He would like Yashio to watch over the village even during work. However, Yashio thinks it is not easy to arrange. Then he notices a communication system window with a suggestion to download an app to play the game anytime and anywhere from a smartphone. Having never had a smartphone before, he did not imagine such a convenient option existed. He quickly installs the app. And as soon as it starts, he sees that he can easily control miracles and prophecies on his phone. Although he cannot use it during work, he still checks it during breaks or when riding in someone else's car, and this causes him some concern. That evening, Yashio comes home exhausted after working as a cleaner, and got scared seeing how the lizard eats. He guesses that mother has probably already fed him, although he himself is hungry and decides to check the village first. When they arrive, all the villagers are in the common room, and finally comes out, apologizing for troubling them and therefore says that he has thought long and carefully about asking to stay with them. Mask says he thought about leaving the forest, but feels that his comrades might still be alive there, since he is not familiar with the world beyond the forest. This village is the only place he can call home. He bows and begs to be allowed to stay, and after a short pause, the villagers warmly welcome him, happy that he joined. Seeing most trembling with emotion because of their kindness, Yashio cannot help but think that they are truly wonderful people. A pop-up window informs him that a mouse has settled in the village. The window also displays the statistics of Mosa, and Yashio is stunned to see that Mosa is 151 years old. And he is even more surprised to learn that the mouse was female. She has a distinct androgynous beauty and a face that could belong to either a man or a woman, but he considered her a man based on her actions, and reflecting, Yashio realizes that she never made it clear that she was a man, and notices that Kim also did not notice this. He thinks that Kim would have thought of a girl who hunts so skillfully alongside her older brother. Despite this, Yashio believes that another villager is truly a good addition, and he hopes that they will all continue to get along with the mouse. His phone rings, he breaks away from the game, and is surprised that his sister is calling. She sounds scared and asks him to come to her. She tells that when she got off the bus on the way home, she felt that someone was following her. So she quickly ran into the nearest store. He was worried that it might be the man who once stabbed Yashio with a knife. Many years ago, Yoshi Pospic decisively takes action and asks Saki to stay calm. He hurriedly left and told her not to run the store. Meanwhile, the lizard watches and retreats. Yashio races on his bicycle, tightly clenching his jaw to help his sister. He breathes heavily and speeds through the streets to the store where his sister sought shelter. Suddenly stopping near the store, he panics and looks around for the pursuer. At first, he focused on finding his sister and calming her down. Running inside, he sees her in the aisle, clearly frightened. He sees that she is very upset and trembling as he grabs her hand. Yashio remembers the pursuer and angrily decides to go outside to confront the man. He told her to stay put, although she asked him to wait. After 10 minutes, he returned, searched the surroundings, but found no one matching Saki's description. She is upset and apologizes for dragging him there, doubts if she overdid it, and doesn't understand what is happening to her. Saki almost broke down. Her brother catches her, holds her by the shoulders, and calms her down. Silently swore that the pursuer would not escape justice. Later, when Yashio goes to work, Soking wrote to him that their dad will pick her up. Since the incident, she is picked up from the bus stop either by him or by Yashio, when possible, but this does not solve the main problem. Checking the phone, he looks at the Village of Faith and sees how Moss suggests to the group to visit her village tomorrow. Yosa, like the villagers, is embarrassed by this idea, but the elf explains that even after the destruction, there are still useful things, food and supplies left in the elven village. Hams is not sure, but most claim that these things are needed, and that the villagers will be glad if their avengers use them. Carol gladly says that she wants to join. She surprises her parents, who worry about her safety. She says she is tired of always staying behind to look after the house. Although Ken did not help at all, he is still allowed to leave. Carol says that she would also like to join. Hans agrees that she could come, saying that she is still young and naturally tired of sitting behind a fence or in a cave. But he may object that it is too risky. Ganges assures them that it is safer here now because they defeated the enemies who attacked the village of Muse. He added that he would be more worried if Carol stayed alone. Ken is still not convinced. But her brother quietly says that Ross and his wife will join if Carol goes, and the break will lift everyone's spirits. Yoshi notices that Gantz has taken on a bigger role as protector of the villagers than he himself has, and always considers their needs when making decisions. Since the bodies in Moose Village are buried, there is nothing to see there. Most suggests riding horseback and using a whole village cart to carry supplies back and make the trip more practical. Now noticing him with a phone, Yamamoto asks Yashio if he is playing a new game, and he, frightened, quickly turns off the phone. A young man notices his coworker is depressed today and asks what is bothering him. Yamamoto openly brings up the topic of the game again and explains that it is like a strategic simulator where you capture enemy territories. He prepared on his day off and got to work, destroyed a large base, but then one of his bases was hit. Yamamoto says he spent a lot of money to become stronger, but everything was lost when he lost. A few bases remained intact, although he invested half of the previous month's income into the one that was destroyed, and instead of just pitying him. Yashio felt a kinship through his frustration because he himself invested money in the village of Doli and admitted that he spent quite a bit on microtransactions, which helped them bond through shared misfortune. The next day, Yashi inspects the village while they prepare to set out for Maya's. The journey heads to the village of Lozia, which stands on the other side of the river, beyond the forest near the cave. Since there is no wooden bridge, they have to take a longer route along the river downstream to a shallow ford, and then climb up to the opposite bank. As they continue walking, Yashio studies the map from a high point and watches for dangers around. It is nice that having Mishka as a resident, I can see all the places she knows. Thanks to the elf journeys, Yashio can now see large areas of the Forbidden Forest on the map. I check local scams, and the team has not arrived yet, so it becomes a habit. Although he still does not fully understand the size and layout of the forest. While Caroline enjoys the adventure, she pretends to be a princess guarded by her brave Nightgem, who indulges her while Kim quietly grumbles aside. She was jealous of her brother as they approached their goal. As they get closer, Yashio carefully examines the ruined village in search of hidden dangers. I notice that it is mostly burned, but there might still be some hidden food there. You only notice a group of people in the ruins. At first you think they are survivors, but on closer inspection it turns out not to be so. A middle-aged man leads, apparently classic fantasy adventures, although he cannot hear their words from afar. When the Bible is not nearby, Yashio does not hear them. Earlier he learned that miracles and prophecies only work when they are close, and still thinks to inform the Gams and others with a prophecy. He hesitates to use his only daily chance unless it is urgent, especially since the strangers do not look hostile. Meanwhile, Misha, who arrived first, feels that something is wrong and tells Russ and his family to wait aside. The man still insists on joining the group, although it is clear that in this world Carol will once face risks, and then GAMS also notices something, pushing Kim to hide behind the house because the majority confirms that they have company. Armed, they attack the potential threat. The elf aimed her bow at the strangers and sharply asked what they were doing in her village. The travelers cover the middle-aged man all the way to Mouse Adelaide. Recognizes him as Dold, and he knows for two. Having recognized the elf, the man orders everyone to lower their weapons, calms the situation, then explains to the mouse that he was worried when he heard about the fate of the village. She breathes a sigh of relief because she is safe, convinces Yashio and their decent people, and the majority assures the villagers of this punishment. Edler Dahl often came, and the tearful merchants saw their suffering, offer an exchange for everything they have, and return to their cave when they finish at the ruins. In the village of Ru, they gladly agree to the offer, and Yashio surveys the situation. Watching peasants rummage through the ruins in search of necessary items and goods for exchange. At first he was nervous, but he is glad that everything is going well, calling it an unexpected pleasure. When he checks the Miracle tab, he discovers that it is the miracle he activated 3 days ago and marvels that it worked right now in such a situation. He understands that some miracles do not happen immediately, but take effect when their time comes. When they load the goods onto the cart, Ken asks to pray for the people from the village of Mayu before leaving. And everyone holds hands and prays by the graves, wishing them eternal peace. After this touching moment, the peasants and the group return to the cave. They feel safe because of their numbers. Yashio goes out for meat and fruits. But when he returns, he is shocked that the lizard has slipped out of the terrarium again and climbed onto the table. The creature leans its head toward the plate of meat, clearly wanting its share. Yashio and the lizard started eating together, and he refocused on the game. Inside the cave, Dold praises the location of the village and its diverse talents. Calling them ideal residents, Russ is stunned by the generous sum the merchant pays for their goods. The merchant explains that he added a bonus because he sees growth potential in them. They are supported by the god of fate, and he hopes to trade with them for a long time. Offering to trade either for money or barter, Russ feels deep gratitude for this arrangement. And Carol's father asks the merchant to learn about the people ready to settle in the village. The merchant thinks about it and notes that many villages have recently been destroyed, so some may be looking for a peaceful place to live. He says that the forbidden forest can hardly be called peaceful, so he suggests considering moving to another place and nudges Yashio. Someone considers this idea wise because leaving the forest will not end the game. However, Yashio feels that moving to another village might break the rules of the game. He wonders if it can be considered a victory that villagers elsewhere prosper, and decides that their happiness is more important than his desire to continue the game. Whatever they choose, he will support them without imposing prophecy. Russ stands up and says that he wants to stay. The god of fate protects earthly life as a divine task, and his wife considers it her duty to stay with him. Meanwhile, Carol wants to stay with everyone. Ken plans to spend the rest of his life there. Jem vows to protect them all and the moose. Unfamiliar with the world beyond the forest, she refuses to leave the land where her brother died. The trader respects their choice and promises to find others willing to join the village. Shaking Russ's hand, he promises to return in a few days with the necessary supplies. I am leaving Yoshi and grateful that they decided to stay. Yashio sends a prophecy, the Bible glows and the chemists. He opens it and reads aloud, greeting Mass in the village on behalf of the god of fate, honoring the fallen and wishing her well. Yashio steps back from his desk, confident that they are ready for winter and may even receive additional help. Returning to the lizard, he asks what name she likes. At first, it proposed the lizard Astoris, whom it dislikes very much. A predetermined fate as a tribute to their shared path. In the village of faith, the golden lizard climbs lively while Yashio is alone in his room. Let's step out of the frame while he looks at the smartphone. He is writing C again after years with Simon. I am sincerely glad that I managed to get in touch again, but I don't know how to maintain contact with her now. 10 years ago, when C got a job at a big company, Yoshi was both pleased and irritated by her success. When he himself couldn't find a job, he stopped all communication with her and avoided meetings. Yashio feels bad and doubts whether he deserves to communicate with her again, as if nothing happened. He also doesn't want to distance himself from her and doesn't know what to do. He finds it hard to talk to people outside the family. He wishes Gems would show him how to communicate with others. In the village, Carol asks the soldier what he is doing, reacting the same way as Kim. When she finds out that he hunts with moss, still she wishes him well, and he responds by stroking her head. Yashio doesn't understand any of this because he believes that only attractive boys can stroke a girl's head without it seeming strange, so he turns to Ruse, hoping the former merchant can talk like an adult. Russ makes a list of what they can offer the doll and what they need in return, and is glad the merchant came to trade. Layla takes this as a divine hint for the man not to overexert himself. He feels the need not to fall behind Gan's efforts. Rufsa is worried that he is useless, even though he is older, and Yashio understands this when he also compares himself to Hams. He sees Russ forcing himself to do unusual physical exercises, and admits that his troubled legs could take Carol away. His wife jokes that it is already too late. She reassures him that everything is fine because he has her nearby. Leaving Yashio in jealousy, no exchange helps him, so he thinks to find someone who will help him win a woman's heart. The sister simply mocked him. One of his gaming friends says he charms women, but he is always online. Yoshi remembers that he did not send a prophecy that day. Having nothing specific to say, he decides to use this to his advantage. In the village, Ken announces a new prophecy to the group. When they gather, she says that the god of fate asks for their advice on a serious romantic problem of a young believer. God admits that human love is incomprehensible to him, and this confuses the villagers because of the strange prophecy. Yashio worries that he messed up because of such a blasphemous message. I feel awkward when I ask for a video. Characters of love video games. They are all he has, unlike others. Carol is happy with the consultation and wants to consult later. When Kim starts arguing about who should speak to the deity, Layla intervenes, stops the dispute, and reminds everyone about their god's request. Senior is a good opportunity to thank him for his constant help. Muse joins in and complains that an elf like her doesn't understand romance, and Yashio notices that women willingly help him with the problem. Lask asks Kim to explain in more detail, and the priestess explains that the man has a childhood friend who is more than just a friend but not yet a lover, and Kim thinks it's cute that he has had a close person for so long. Here I understand the man who teases her and hints that after so many years together, he might get bored. As soon as Alice stops the argument, Kim tells everyone that the man hadn't communicated with his childhood friend for years, but recently they reconnected, and he is unsure how to talk to her, so he asks for advice on how to restore their old closeness. Carol quickly agrees, saying that she is very popular among the men in the village. Unlike Kim, who, as she says, scares them off with her bold behavior. Carol advises the man to simply invite his friend on a date because it won't be too intrusive since they were close before. She adds that if it doesn't work out, then it's a lost cause, so he can give up. Her words painfully hurt Yashio when he reads them on the internet. Kim agrees believed that by having fun together, they shorten the distance between themselves faster than during tense conversations. Layla confirms this, recalling how her husband's invitation to a date ignited their relationship, even though they were not close yet. Making Russ blush with shame. The lady says that elves nurture love for years and rarely make bold moves, so she doubts she is a good example. Yashio recalls how he and Saki used to spend a lot of time together, but now everything seems different. Yashio wonders what kind of dates are suitable for people his age, and if Saki even wants that at all. Ken just wants someone to be happily by her side, and Layla says it's cute when a man tries too hard to be gallant on a date and makes mistakes, teasing her husband again. Yashio wants to share the excitement of the villagers, but a date still seems unattainable to him. Listening to their advice, Yashio takes his phone and leaves. Maybe he sends Saki a message to invite her for a walk that day. He decides to write a simple invitation. He clenched the phone, hoping everything went well. At the cafe, Saki sees his message and smiles. Yashio is shocked she replies so quickly. Panic realized that he invited her on a date on a weekday, and this shows how detached he is from ordinary life. He is both disappointed and relieved because her response showed that she is open to his invitations and encouraged him to try again. The next day, Layla, Kim, and Carol were washing clothes near the cave, and the priestess is thinking about yesterday's prophecy and is sure that the god of fate mocks other believers in the same way, and asks how everything turned out for the man. Seeing this, Yashio decides to tell how it all ended. Yashio invents a few details and thanks them. When the Bible shines, Sam opens it and says that they helped because the man's next invitation to a date must succeed. Inside, Yashio appreciates the villagers' enthusiasm about his problem. It reminds him how his mother and Saki got hooked on TV series. He understands that the villagers are so happy after defending their village for a long and hard time, and they never had a chance to have fun, so it is understandable that this overwhelms them. Although he somewhat reluctantly admits his ignorance and discomfort, for now he wants to continue talking about love. The next day he again shares with the villagers a prophecy about love. He explains that he agreed to go for a walk with a childhood friend, but does not know where to take her, so he asks the villagers which places women might like. Ken announces good news and suggests the man take her to the theater. Leela finds it sweet, recalling that their first date with Russ was at the theater for a romantic play, and the dark seats added charm to it. Carol and most support this idea, and Yoshi either decides that a movie will do, since it is already night. He thinks she is probably going home and tells him. He himself needs to follow their advice so that the villagers are not disappointed, and he plans to inform them later. Z answers his call, surprised that he is calling, and Yashio gathers courage to invite her on a date on her next free day. The next day, Kim reads aloud the last prophecy, where Yashio thanks the villagers for their help and notes that the young man's bond with his friend has grown stronger. After consultation, he is grateful for their support, but feels a slight regret that everything is returning to how it was before. He thinks it would be better if life remained so positive, and hopes that the village will prosper and be safe, so that his prophecies always bring calm and joyful news. He puts on his robe and sets off to earn money for the village and for a date, excited by the opportunity to go out into the wide world. One night, Yashio returns home from work and receives a message from Saki, who asks to be picked up from the bus stop because she will arrive later. He immediately agrees, remembering that there is a store nearby, and plans to buy candy and juice there. He goes to the store to look for his backpack, while Destiny watches this carefully. Sounds of approaching vehicles can be heard. He approaches and decides to go inside for a minute until his sister arrives. But he stops calling it. Near the door, he notices a familiar man coming out. A sharp pain gripped his stomach when a memory surged. Years ago, his sister said that some stalker was constantly watching her, and he went with her to deal with him. In the end, it turns out that you look like an ordinary child. Thinking that shouting in the role of an adult college student would scare the boy, he demanded that the stalker stay away from Saki. Not receiving a response, Yoshi grabbed the boy by the collar. But the boy muttered something incomprehensible before stabbing him in the stomach with a butterfly knife. When he fell, wounded and bleeding, the boy looked fiercely and warned him not to stand in his way. Because of this, Yashio could not protect his sister. Now it is not surprising to see the stalker again, because this is his hometown. But a chance encounter with him in a shop near the stop that Saki uses seems too convenient. Yashio decides that this man is the stalker again. He wants to call the police, but remembers that the police said they cannot intervene without a real incident. There is little time to decide. Saki's bus is leaving soon. He knows he cannot leave her alone with this. Yashio did not want his sister to live in fear any longer. So if he went outside to deal with the situation. He noticed two young men in the parking lot and was about to shout to get their attention. If the situation escalates. When he approached the supposed pursuer, he asked if he was Yashio Naga, and the man was curious who Yoshi was and who Yashio was. Once a neat person recalled this man's cooperation in his sister's case. Surprisingly, the man realized that Yashio was Saki's older brother. Yashio greeted him and watched how the man would react to this unexpected meeting. However, Yashio Nagabod expressed regret and admitted that he caused trouble, and his apology for the past somewhat stunned Yashio. And he apologized to Suri Ai for his previously harsh words, admitting that he should have thought more before speaking. Yashio Naga insisted that his actions, stalking Saki and harming her brother, were unforgivable. He came to apologize. Surprisingly, Yashio asked him to lift his head and pondered how much trauma that incident caused. Although he wanted to express his opinion, Yashio restrained himself and focused on keeping Saki safe, because he was still wary of meeting Yashio Naga so late in such a place, and Yashio Naga explained that this was the only nearby store he visited after work. From their conversation, Yashio Naga seemed like just a good young man, and compared to him, the unkempt Yashio could seem like a stalker. Apologizing for scaring him, Yashio firmly told him to stay away from his sister. Yashio Naga sadly admitted that his feelings for her got out of control and guided his past actions, but according to him, after he left, he did not approach her, and then directly asked why he was still following her. When the young man looked shocked, Yashio recalled the restraining order. He said he noticed him a second time. The first time was when he previously ran out of the store. It was a bluff. Yoshi was not sure if it happened exactly then, but felt that it did. Yashio's bet worked when Yashio Naga's polite mask fell, and he realized he was caught. He admitted that his testimony about the reform school was false, shouted that he was just going home and waiting for her when Yashio approached him threateningly, causing him to lose control and stab them with a knife. Grabbing Yashio by the hair, he shouted that his brothers and sisters had ruined his life and blamed them. Seeing the man's madness, Yashio warned him not to touch Saki. But the stalker did not back down and was not going to stop his obsessive attention to her. When Yashio threatened to call the police, Yashio mockingly said it was useless because he had learned tricks to commit crimes in the reform school that the cops could not prove, and he had made new allies there. Worried, Yashio asked what he wanted to achieve by stalking her. He replied that it was all out of love and explained that he once loved her deeply but was too shy to confess. After the arrest, he had time to think about what he would do if they met again, and at first planned to apologize and ask for forgiveness. He thought about disappearing and wishing her well from afar, but over time, when he did not see her, his thoughts darkened. Now even imagining her was risky, and he dreamed of her on her knees begging, wanting to see her tears. While Yashio listened in horror. Yashio is stunned and realizes he cannot just sit and eat and leave a dangerous person alone. He wants to run away, but does not want to bring more regret or pretend his past does not exist, so even if it threatens his life, he is ready to face this threat. As he approaches closer, at Mikasami, Yashida and Naga step back a little and warn that the attack could bring Yashida trouble with the police. But Yashio is not naive. From the very beginning, he quietly recorded everything on his smartphone, and without suspecting this, Yashio Naga continues to tease him. Claiming that he is now a law-abiding citizen and asserting that their meeting that day was fate, he will carry out his intention, even considering kidnapping Yashio. Then Yoshi notices two men approaching from the parking lot. Yashinaga reveals his former school friends who plan to kidnap Saki and use her. At first, they plan to record this and send the video to Yashio for revenge, but now they want to do it live. The hooligans pull out weapons, and although Yashio is burning with anger and wants to rush in, he realizes that confronting 3 is dangerous. It is late outside, no one is nearby, so calling for help is useless. Frightened, they were encouraged by memories of games and others who fought the worst threats. He prepares to confront these ordinary people, and one attacker notices Yashio's determination despite their numbers and weapons, noting his strong build. Yashio silently thinks that their fatigue is caused by his training. He warns them that their actions will not go unpunished, but Yashinaga boasts that his friends from the tough gang will handle everything. Trapped, Yashio fled to a 24-hour store where the hooligans could not act, and there he called the police, showed the recording, and reported that they were armed. Electroshock device, baton, and knife, because of which they were arrested. Standing before a knife that could destroy a rock. A weapon for close range, or a stun gun that will leave him helpless. Yashio targets the bait and the one holding it, catches him by surprise, stops the attack, and pushes him into another bandit. He dodges the knife lightning fast, but when freedom is almost near, 2 more bandits block his way to the store. Cornered again in the parking lot, Yasunaga suggests making himself 3 legs to stop and run away. And now with 5 enemies, Yashio feels doomed. But just as the hooligan is about to strike, he suddenly gasps for breath and falls. Another one follows him, doing the same. Meanwhile, 2 others cry uncontrollably, as if under the influence of tear gas. Also that soon they can help us on the spot. Yasunaga, still standing, demands to know what Yoshu did. But although embarrassed, Yashio takes the opportunity. He boldly warned that he would not attack an unprepared passerby and insisted that Yashio Naga take his team to the hospital, otherwise they would face the same fate. His vision darkens and Yashio Naga lunges with a knife, ready to strike. Yashio takes the blow himself, but soon he and Naga succumb to the same mysterious illness and fall, gasping and foaming at the mouth. Wildered Yashio checks them and makes sure they are not pretending. And although he would gladly leave them there, he fears he will be blamed if they die. I enter the mini-market. He informs the staff about the situation outside. 5 men have fallen outside, foam is coming from their mouths, provoking someone to call an ambulance. Soki gets off the bus at the stop near the store, and only then does she notice the chaos in the parking lot and watches as several. The fast ones go to the area and return from it. Approaching closer, she sees paramedics providing first aid to several men. They carry them on stretchers, and the police take statements from people nearby. To her surprise, she noticed her older brother talking to a policeman about what happened. The policeman questioned him about how he knows these 5 men, but the young man hesitated and did not give a clear answer. Doubting, the officer asked to check. He looks through Yasha's things and searches him while he raises his hands. Saki approaches when the officer asks to look in her brother's bag, and she allows it. Yashio tells her that the men in the parking lot were poisoned by food or something similar, and asks her to go home while he deals with the police, saying he already called their father to pick her up. Their conversation is interrupted by an officer who exclaims in surprise, and Destiny, his pet lizard, crawls out of Tiacho's backpack. He picks it up and says that it is just his pet. Despite the surprise, the officer still asks Yashio to come to the station to answer questions about what happened. Yashio agrees, but asks to give the lizard to his sister so she can take it home. He hands Destiny to Saki, promising to explain everything later, and leaves with the officer. Eventually, the police interrogation lasted until morning. Yashio described what the officers saw when they arrived and told details about Yashio Naga, a former stalker who planned to attack his younger sister. He plays a recording from his smartphone as evidence, and the police act based on this recording. Fortunately, the recording cuts off in the middle, so the moment when he threatened Yashio Naga was not recorded and he avoided trouble. Leaving the police station, Yashio stretches and squints, looking at the rising sun. He says how good it is to be free, a phrase he always wanted to say. He does not notice that his father and sister are watching him. Saki, worried by his words, asks if he is okay, and their father, who was once young too, understands why he says that. Embarrassed, Yoshi realizes that a war is coming. He asks if they are skipping work, but Saki replies that they came for him because they were worried, and apologizes because she feels she dragged him into this mess when she asked him to pick her up. He reassures her, and the father suggests going home instead of standing and talking near the police station. On the road, Yashio thinks about how much to tell this family. He knew that sooner or later they would find out about the stalker, even if he hid it, and that Saki could also be interrogated, so he decided to tell first to mitigate the consequences. Sighing, he tells them this story. After that, during this, Saki angrily hits the car door. She is furious because her old stalker has not changed and has even perfected his terrifying methods. Her father tells her to relax. For recklessness, Although his tone is soft, the words hit hard, and Yashio admits that he restrains his anger. Looking around, he realizes that he mistakenly underestimated the situation. Yashio Nago was left alone and wondered what tortures might await him if the hooligans had not suddenly fallen ill. The father said that he did everything possible to protect his younger sister and added that he is proud of this as a father. Yashio suddenly, seeing a rare display of warmth and approval, quietly began to cry. His father noticed how strange it was that at that very moment the bandits were struck down by food poisoning, and although he did not believe in God, he suddenly wanted to give thanks for such a fortunate coincidence. And his son nodded in agreement. At first, the fainting of the 5 men was attributed to food poisoning, because that day they had eaten oysters to celebrate what they had done. This could explain how they got infected, but Yashio was not sure it was that simple. Although food poisoning could explain the foam around their mouths, it did not explain the suffocation and eye irritation. It seemed as if they had inhaled some poisonous gas. Even stranger, Yashio came out of there completely unharmed. When he came home, his mother met him anxiously and asked if he was all right. After calming her fears, he went upstairs and looked at Destiny, his lizard. He remembered that it had been with him at the scene, and for a moment thought it might have caused the incident in the parking lot. Rejecting the idea as absurd, he sat down at the computer and checked the rural game. When it started, he saw the villagers energetically going about their daily tasks. And you were grateful to them. Their bravery somehow gave him the strength to protect his sister. With this thought, he went to sleep. Tired from the previous day, he quickly fell asleep. His mother woke him up only after 6 hours when she called him by name. Going downstairs, he wondered if another package had arrived, but was surprised when his mother said a guest had come to see him and brought a snack to the guest room. Confused, he heard Saki's voice from there. He was stunned to see that she was waiting for him. She explained that she had taken a day off to visit him and Saki and check how they were doing after learning about their trouble. Moved by her concern, he sat down and assured her that he was fine. When they all sat together, he realized that it had been a long time since they had the chance to gather like this. He noticed that the room had become quieter because Saki's lively chatter had stopped when he arrived. He decided to lighten the mood, and she later said that his sister had told her everything about the incident, hesitating and faltering in calling his acquaintance Yoshi by a more familiar name instead of a formal address. He quickly told her that Yoshi was fine. She smiled with relief. They both blushed, but looked a bit shocked and depressed. Bro. He interrupted the moment, asking if the situation was completely resolved. Yashio was confident about this and noted that the hooligans currently in the hospital have compromising messages on their phones and will be arrested after discharge. Soki felt relieved and was surprised when her brother insisted that she call him immediately if anything else happened. Seibund is glad that brothers and sisters are getting along again. When brothers and sisters acknowledge that their bond has improved, sees her eyes widen when she asked if he would agree to be friends with her again. He agreed immediately. She was even surprised that she had to ask, but then remembered that he had consciously avoided her for the last decade despite their recent conversations. Realizing how unfair he had been, he admitted that he always knew he would have to apologize to her in person someday. Bowing deeply, he sincerely apologized for pushing her away back then and assured that he is now ready to be friends. Now C immediately forgives him, like in the old happy times, teasing a little. When he confessed, he thought she despised him. She says that shortly after the incident, she left the city due to a job change and often traveled on business. After a brief hesitation, she almost shares her feelings with him while Saki looks at her expressionlessly. C tries to change the subject, but suddenly screams in fear and points behind Yashio. He sharply turned around, frightened, and saw that Destiny was watching them. This interested Soki. She is delighted by the cute lizard and asks for permission to touch it. But C is clearly afraid of it. Yashio remembers that she always disliked reptiles and Fabians. He reassures her, saying that fate no longer exists. But when she opens her eyes with relief, she sees Yashio holding the lizard right in front of her. She screams loudly and runs to hide, and with tears asks him to stop behaving childishly, confessing that she has always hated this side of him. Surprised, Yashio apologizes while his sister teases him. Meanwhile, Yamamoto is boiling with rage. In his tiny apartment, he angrily looks at his phone. He saw that one of his bases was unexpectedly destroyed and learned that 3 people noticed goblins attacking the Faith Village camp at his base. He grumbles that he is spending a lot of money on the game. and blames Yashio for ruining everything 3 days after their meeting. Doll keeps his promise and returns to trade with the villagers. He brings the ordered goods and several people who want to join. At his signal, two creatures resembling red pandas, dressed as adventurers, get out of the cart, and the trader calls them Han and Ron, a cheerful pair. Yashio is worried, not knowing how the villagers will take it. But they warmly welcome the newcomers. Doll tells them that the pair are talented craftsmen. They work well with wood and have some skills with stone and metal. Once they lived in a cave and learned from the gnomes who mined ore there. Yashio is glad to learn about their skilled craftsmen because he knows it is important for the village's development, and believes that their very presence calms just by a single glance. Days pass since Canny and Ron arrived. When there was no more space in the cave, the villagers pull their fences further. The red pandas build themselves a hut in the new territory. They are now diligently working on a pantry for food with hams and roasted meat. Additionally, Yashio discovers something interesting and is happy because he can command our spearmen. And since most beast folk have bodies stronger than humans, they could become excellent fighters. Construction continues. Moss gathers herbs. A little earlier, Yashio received a package from the villagers containing a file about drugs. Based on what they have already sent him, he believes the medicine is safe, but he is still worried before trying it. However, he appreciates the attention and keeps it as a lucky charm. The evil gods prepare temptation, and the peasants' fighting skills are not bad. If Yoshi from the Sticks sticks to his task until the end of the month, he will gather enough points to call another golem. Last time he was worried about it, but now he eagerly awaits the end of the month. A few days later, after the team finished the morning cleaning, Chief Yashio says they will have lunch and then start the afternoon work. Rest in the bus, then start the night shift, which everyone agrees with in the middle of the cleaning season. At the end of the year, cleaning orders come in from all sides, and December turns into a complete mess for the workers. They start early in the morning and sometimes do not stop until 4 in the morning when everything is very intense. They have a day off the next day, but Yoshi's body is already worn out. He took the job with the intention not to give up, but lately he really wants to skip it. Tired Yashio comes home, does not have dinner, although his mother prepared food, and apologizes and goes to his room. Although his mother prepared food, Yashio goes to his room and greets Destiny, and flops face down on that bed. He wonders how people go to work every day without exception. Something he has never done. He believes they deserve his admiration. He is convinced that those who work diligently in society every day should value themselves more. The next morning he is awakened by the alarm on his phone. He turns it off. Gets up, then checks the village of Doli, where he sees Carol praying at God's altar. Carol offers to God of Faith her favorite breakfast fruit. I pray that everyone will be safe, even if monsters appear during the temptation of the evil god. Inspired by her, Yashio gets up and prepares for work. Got tired while washing the floor. He hears someone shouting that he is not working hard enough. He turns around, sees an angry boss looking at him, and starts telling a story. But Yamamoto apologizes first, and Yashio realizes that he was not the one being scolded. Their boss notices that Yamamoto has looked tired lately and gently suggests he rest if he feels unwell. But the tired young man says that everything is fine, he just hasn't been sleeping and needs money. Yashio noticed that Yamamoto has been acting strangely lately. He used to be cheerful and talkative, but now even during breaks he is glued to a video game and hardly talks. Moreover, he gives Yashio strange looks. During the break, Yashio approaches and talks about it. Yashio has a chance to visit the Village of Fate, but he is worried about Yamamoto, although right now he cannot focus on anyone else. Suddenly, a young man appears behind him and says that he is very fascinated by the game. Yashio waved him off, saying that he was just having fun in his free time. After taking a few steps, Yamamoto explains that the goal of the game is to destroy enemy bases, and that with money you can increase the number of monsters under your command, which attracts Yashio's attention. Yamamoto says that it is like a game where you capture bases. His colleague spins with a wild expression on his face and says that he likes that the goal is to play the villain who destroys villages. He enthusiastically praises the visual part of the game and explains that you appear as an evil god who wins by crushing humanity, and this shocks Yashio. Yamamoto talks about a system where you collect points for victories over enemies and spend them to summon monsters, and you can also pay to get more. He adds that points accumulate quickly if you invest a lot of money, and admits that he spent most of his salary on it. Yashio can imagine such a game if you are an evil god, and he felt the presence of other players during an important event, so it is not surprising that some players can also be evil gods. Yamamoto is not finished yet. He shows that there is a reward system. Destroying an enemy base gives a bunch of points, and they can even be exchanged for something more valuable. Yashio learns that this is real money. It makes sense since the Village of Fate sent him real offerings. Yamamoto says that he once earned 5 million yen from a game. He openly talked about his life. The family was poor, and after his father disappeared and left debts, he had to drop out of school and go to work. When he already thought he had paid off his father's debt, his mother's new partner ran away and left him even more debts. Some say that a child should not pay the parents' debts, but Yamamoto insists that they are still his parents. He is outraged at how unfair it is, because although he rose by his own work, he cannot pay off the debt and gave his teenage and young years to it. Letting it go would be pointless, and Yashio did not know what to say, but surely there are ways a child can get rid of this burden. Yashio believes that a child should not pay for the parents' debts, but he cannot blame Yamamoto for his opinion. Considering it both weak and impressive at the same time, Yamamoto continues to say that this new source of income almost allowed him to pay off the debt. He gets his big chance when he is taken, although he has no skills or education. When Yashio asks why he shares this, Yamamoto quietly admits that he is a hands. Revealing his true role, he plays for the evil god, and Yashio wonders if he noticed him as a rival. Having realized that they were arguing all the time, now Yamamoto is going to confront him during the temptation of the evil god, where the end of the game means a complete exit when Yamamoto walks away. Yoshi wonders if he told his story to push him out of the game. Maybe this is the only ray of light in Yamamoto's dark life. But the same applies to him. For Yashio, life shifted after he found this game. Reunion with family, sake, and employment. The peasants are like supporters to him, so he cannot just let them die. He said, "I will not give up." Updated, Yoshio vows challenges Yamamoto. One-on-one and fight to the end. December 30, the day before the temptation of the evil god, he is at home after a long working day. And his boss appreciates him for his good work. Yamamoto hopes that next year he will again be able to rely on friends, and Masaki greets him and wishes him all the best. He is silent and stays aside, politely bows, thanks them, and hopes that everyone will be able to cooperate well in the future. Also wishing them a good year. The dark influence of the evil god is approaching. Although he does not want to quarrel with Yamamoto, he understands that conflict is inevitable as long as he continues to play Village of Fate. When he comes home, he finds out. He finds it empty because his family went to the grandparents for the new year. He thought about joining his grandparents for the holiday, but decided to stay to focus on the game the next day. When he enters, to his surprise, a female voice sounds, and he follows the light to the kitchen, where C is almost finished preparing dinner. Seeing his surprised look, she explains that his mother asked her to take care of his food. Seeing his reaction, she wonders if he is not hungry. But he quickly assures her that he is very hungry, silently grateful to his mother for organizing it, just as he begins to ask about the food. When he is about to ask what is being cooked, he notices Dola, his life. The lizard has escaped again and sneaks into the kitchen. He quickly picks it up from the floor and warns it. It says that C feels uncomfortable because of the lizards and asks him to behave. The lizard ignores him, and he realizes that he is the only one left who can feed it because everyone else is absent. He asks Dola to wait in his room, promising extra food and a choice of fruits to make a deal. After that, he hurries upstairs, saying that he needs to change clothes. When the food is ready, he sits at the table with the C and begins to eat. He compliments the dish, especially with the soothing taste of miso soup. He jokingly suggests that she teach his younger sister Saki how to cook, but C says that Saki is already taking lessons from her and is getting better at making rolled omelets, which completely surprises Yashio. Looking warmly at him, she asks if she can come again tomorrow. Suddenly embarrassed, he says he would be grateful, but she doesn't need to feel obligated, adding that if she doesn't mind spending so much time with him, she is always welcome, and she agrees, saying she already has a lot of free time. She suggests they mix saltva on New Year's Eve. And while she serves him food, Yashio doubts whether it is normal to feel such pleasure. December 31 brings temptation from the evil god, and Yashio sits in front of the monitor, watching the villagers prepare for the final battle. When the fight begins, he notices Destiny at his desk. He strokes his head and assures him that they will handle this together. At 1:00 p.m., Muse on the watchtower notices the first enemies approaching and mourns 5 black dogs and 5 fierce boars coming towards them. A message appears about the start of the event, temptation of the evil god. The beast lunges forward, Moose shoots with a bow and kills the first black dog, but the others scattered to avoid further arrows. A wider fence complicates the peasants' defense, although they plan to set out. To counter the attack, the ground collapses under the creatures as they approach, and several of them fall to their deaths. A week ago, Yashio advised them in a prophecy to dig deep pits, to line the bottom with sharp stakes to catch the enemies. Some die immediately, while Moose will do everything else. For the fierce boars and reckless attacks, they installed stakes at head level so that the beasts would impale themselves on them. The real threat is the black dogs. They are so strong that they can jump over traps. Another fierce boar must be killed on the other side of the fence, where some creatures even have deadly tusks. Announces to everyone that 3 black dogs are approaching the boundary of the enclosure. Hams and Ron tightly gripped their weapons, preparing for the attack, and quickly destroyed the dogs jumping over the fence, acting with ruthless precision. After removing the initial furrow, Yashio says that the additional help made the area completely safe, leaving no threats. Taking advantage of the moment, Hans orders the villagers to prepare for the next trial. The villagers begin setting traps again, working together under Yoshi's wise leadership. These traps may fail again if Yamamoto gains full control over the creatures. But it seems he can only give them simple commands, so the traps will still be effective. Yoshi understands that the monsters will become stronger with the onset of night, and both sides test each other's strength, trying to conserve energy for relentless fights throughout the evening. The creatures constantly launch brutal attacks on the village, but the villagers fiercely fight back, killing and repelling them. During pauses between attacks, those who are not fighting bring food and water to the defenders, allowing them to rest and replenish their strength. Yashio is satisfied with how things are going so far, because everything has gone smoothly until now. He still has a goal and a backup plan, so he is optimistic that he will finish this before Saki arrives at night. Looking at the dead monsters, he begins to think about Yamamoto's situation. Yashio thinks about how Yamamoto is doing and wants to contact him, but decides not to do so, thinking that Yamamoto would take it as mockery, even though their connection in real life has broken down. Choosing to protect the loot and the villagers, Yashio reminds himself to stay focused and strengthen his resolve for what lies ahead. As the clock approaches 5:30, he finds it strange that the monsters have not attacked for a whole hour, even after the last wave related to the temptation of the evil god. This was the longest pause so far, which gave hope. Layla suggests that Hams and the team might have already defeated all the enemies, and Russ believes that the enemy surrendered, realizing that their attacks were futile. But Ham remains cautious. Yashio agrees, thinking that Yamamoto put everything into this fight and will not retreat easily. Sunday. Suddenly, a loud noise comes from downstairs in his house, so Yoshi gets up to check, suspecting that Saki arrived earlier and calls her by name. Not finding her in the kitchen, he goes to the living room to look further. Yashio stops in his tracks as he opens the door. He notices broken glass from the sliding door and a burglar in a ski mask standing in the room looking at him. Stunned, he starts to take out his phone to call the police. A piece, but then he notices a strand of hair sticking out from under the mask. He recognizes the uninvited guest and calls Yamamoto, which causes them to have a self-satisfied smile. A few months ago, Yamamoto returned to his worn-out apartment and found an unexpected envelope in the mailbox. Interested, he opened it at home. Yamamoto read the letter and was shocked to learn that he had been chosen as a beta tester for a game called Destruction Impulse. Although he did not remember signing up for it, having some free time, he decided to try it and scan the QR code with his phone. Like Yashio, he was immediately impressed by the game's extremely realistic graphics, which seemed very promising. Then he familiarized himself with the game rules and learned that he could summon monsters and command them to attack enemy targets. At first, Yamamoto studied the game with bases, but decided to skip it when he realized he wouldn't be able to complete them alone. Later, a man loudly knocked on his door. He angrily insisted that Yamamoto pay the fees for this month and all overdue debts, threatening consequences if he did not settle. Kunlai and Yamamoto transferred the money and asked if that solved their problems. The man agreed as soon as the money appeared in the account. Surprised by the easy payment, he asked where Yamamoto got the funds, but he waved it off and promised to pay on time in the future. After the man left, Yamamoto closed the door and laughed strangely. He was glad that the impulse to destroy the game really brought money into his account. He ignored the game for a while, but recently checked it again and discovered that his monsters attacked a small enemy base and added points to him. Having figured it out, he learned that those points could be exchanged for real money, so he dived into it head first. He updates his monsters using premium features and targets bigger bases. Earning money just by playing seemed like a real dream to him, and although he didn't understand why the company arranged everything so generously, he thought he could pay off his debts this way. Later, the boss introduced him to a new colleague, Misaki Yashio. Yamamoto noticed Yashio's strong build, but also his pale, sickly appearance and strange behavior, yet he still saw the young man's determination. Exposed, Yashio will hold out for a long time, although the work is hard for the man. Eventually, he came to respect Yashio's diligence and positive attitude, considering him a reliable junior colleague. During the next event, Temptation of the Evil Gods in the game, Yamamoto was outraged when he was defeated. They expected an easy victory and were surprised by the powerful warrior who appeared at the end. He regretted sending his red Cyclops to the elf village instead of that fight. Learning that Yashio loves video games, he thought they could become friends. But he was stunned to learn that Yashio's loot had destroyed his precious red Cyclops, which was related to the previous attack on the village. Coming home from work, he assessed his situation and realized that from now on he had to defend his own base. With weakened forces, he could not spend points as freely as before. Then he noticed Yashio playing a game on his phone. He was shocked to see that it was the same person, felt an urge to destroy, but suspicion arose in the enemy camp, and he began to doubt whether Yashio had known this from the very beginning. Secretly mocked him. Angry, he approached Yashio at work and expressed his outrage. Admitted that he knew about their rivalry in the game. During that day of the temptations of the evil god, Yamamoto decided to change his life through the game and did not allow anyone to stop him. When the first wave hit, he let it determine Yashio through cunning traps, and the shock that Yashio's power had grown so much since their last clash. This provoked stress in him and made him smoke one cigarette after another. During the day, he smoked cigarettes. When threats appeared, he realized that his plan to gradually wear down the opponent would not work against such smart enemies. He thought about immediately pouring money and distincting his troops, but he knew that Yashio probably had a hidden advantage with golem. Unsure of the next step, he thought he would have the advantage if Yashio disappeared briefly. His gaze fell on a baseball bat leaning against the wall and tempting him, but he restrained himself. Realizing how distorted this idea was, he understood that acting would mean betraying the honest and hardworking life he had always led, so he told himself to calm down and still hoped he could win because his monster was getting stronger at night. The cigarettes ran out. He decided to go out to buy more and clear his head. But as soon as he opened the door, he ran into a strange man. He was wearing sunglasses and a leather jacket, and when he asked who the man was, the stranger replied by asking if Yamamoto believed in gods, hinting at a connection with something unusual, after which he suspected that he belonged to some religious group. Yamamoto told him to go away, but he could not help but look closely at his clothes and overall impression, noticing that he did not seem like a typical believer. Offended by the remark, the man said that he really believed in gods, especially evil gods. With one movement of his hand, he performed a strange hypnotic trick that left Yamamoto puzzled. Now let's go. Now Yamamoto finds himself in Yashio's room, holding a crowbar, while his colleague and rival calls him by name. Today the young man takes off his ski mask. Yashio, with a worried look, caught him red-handed. He asks what he is doing and what is wrong with it, simply telling him to drop the weapon, promising that it will be treated as a simple scare if he complies, with a creepy smile. Yamamoto says that Yashio knows why he is here, and Yashio admits that he is interfering in the game and promises not to complicate the situation if Yamamoto backs down. He asked him to calmly wait until the influence of the evil god passes, still trying to persuade him. Yashio warns him not to do anything stupid and points out that he is breaking the law, but Yamamoto sharply replies, questioning whether Yashio will quit the game that Yamamoto sincerely asked him to quit, which Yashio is unable to do. Yamamoto will later tell his legend, saying that he got drunk, came to sit with a colleague, they quarreled, and the crowbar was from Yashio's shed. Although Yashio insists that this excuse will not hold up, Yamamoto says that people will believe it because he is more trusted in society. He has worked hard, paid off his parents' debt, and has a good reputation. Although Yashio has not been seen for 10 years and therefore has no social standing, no one would even doubt whose story carries more weight. Yamamoto insists, saying that he also does not want to harm Yashio because a criminal record would ruin his life. He assumes that Yoshi will agree and deliberately lose. He offers to split the money from the robbery in half in exchange. For Yashio, this is an attractive deal. No injuries, some money, and Yamamoto will become his friendly colleague again. The only loss was that the village of Doli gradually disappeared from his daily life. Skeptically, Yoshi meets his gaze and asks one question. He asks if Yamamoto feels no remorse at all. When asked if he felt guilty for attacking the village in the game, or if the death of such realistic characters made him think, Yamamoto replies that despite the visual effects, for him it is just a game. He adds that even if they were real people, they would be strangers, like random TCC in Warzone reports, and Yashio admits that he is rarely moved by horrific scenes on television. But he says that NPCs in the game try very hard to live normally, and do it much better than a reclusive homebody like himself. Yamamoto doubts whether Yashio is stupid and regrets that they cannot understand each other. When he is asked to reconsider his position, he suddenly bursts out in anger. He explains that he has suffered all his life because of a bad family and a huge debt they placed on him. Angrily, he doubts that Yashio, who had an easy life, truly understands the value of money. Yamamoto notes that he has not worked for 10 years and says that Yashio does not even know how much his upkeep costs annually and how much the family sacrificed from their earnings to support him. Yashio falls silent and cannot respond. He faints. He always finds excuses, blaming society or bad luck, or convinces himself that being neat is normal because he harms no one. This leaves him defenseless against Yamamoto's words, and Yamamoto continues, saying that he finally took advantage of this opportunity, a man without education and without notable skills. He knows well that without a decent higher education, society does not offer a good future. Yashio also cannot respond to this because he wasted his privileged childhood in vain, became lazy, dropped out of school, missed all chances, and realized that his words would carry no weight for Yamamoto. Surprised, Yamamoto asks why Yashio is crying if he himself is on the verge of a breakdown. Yoshare replies that Yamamoto is incredible, much more than he will ever be. The younger man perceives this as mockery from a person who easily passed through life. But Yashio says it sincerely, and he is stunned because he realizes that he has been lucky all along, even though he did nothing for 10 years. He knows that if he had realized this earlier, his life could have been completely different. Instead, his inactivity became a burden. Yamamoto laughs, dismisses Yashio's words as empty pity, and tells him that if he feels that way, then let him scream. It is worth calming down and observing from the side. He takes out his smartphone and shows that the final attack has begun in the village in Sackable God's Temptation Saki. And the worried Yamamoto climbs the watchtower. Looking into the forest, he is stunned by the huge army of monsters emerging from the trees, including black dogs, wild boars, goblins, and even powerful red cyclopes heading towards him. Yamamoto announces that he is going on a full offensive, having thrown all troops and spent all the money. If he loses, it's all over. He will have nothing left even to capture at least one base, so he hopes the village will collapse. Yashio involuntarily approaches the computer, but Yamamoto waves a crowbar. At that moment, see a modest girl who, hearing loud noises, goes to the living room thinking that Yashio has guests, and Yashio, frightened, shouts at her to stay away. But she still opens the door and bursts into the tense confrontation between him and Yamamoto. Panics because he thinks it's theft and draws Yamamoto's attention. He swings a crowbar at her, and Yashio lunges forward sharply to intervene. Protecting with his body, he pushes the seed to a safe place. The crowbar hits this shoulder blade, knocked him to the floor with a cry of pain. Yamamoto plunges into the chaos, despite the burning pain in his back and difficulty breathing. He shouts toward the sea for her to run away because he worries about her safety. His friend freezes in place, but he shouts again, asking her not to make his sacrifice in vain and to run. Seeing the open sliding doors, she rushes to them seeking help. When Yamamoto starts chasing her, she grabs the bottom of his pants, angry and blind with rage. Yamamoto turns around, and the stretcher-bearer asks if Yashio really wants to look cool in front of the girl. A moment before she runs out of the house, she hears a terrible crunch and, frightened, turns back and sees Yamamoto brutally beating Yashio, who lies helplessly on the floor. Shouting for him not to interfere, Yamamoto prepares the final blow. I look at the watches. Unable to intervene, Suddenly the blow hangs in the air, and Yamamoto stares at his hands in stupor, unable to move them. Saki stands stunned, and Yamamoto frantically waves the crowbar, his body no longer under control. Then he notices Destiny, the golden lizard on the floor, who rushed to help her master. Here, suspecting that the lizard caused his strange condition, Yamamoto threatens her to step back. He aims the crowbar at it. Destiny releases a poisonous mist, forcing Yamamoto to drop the weapon, clutch his throat, and fall to the ground. She sees him, he is going to her friend, but then she notices that Destiny is crawling on her slipper, and she retreats back in panic. The lizard climbs up her body to her face, sticking out its tongue and hissing. Causing C to faint, Yashio sees everything but cannot speak or move his limbs. I wonder if this is exactly how he will die. He hopes that she is safe before losing consciousness. When he regains consciousness, fate is before him. Tearing the vial with his tail, the medicine that Yashio considers created by moss. Realizing that the lizard wants him to drink it, he opens his mouth, and fate pours the contents of the bottle into his mouth. Immediately, a stream of energy passed through him, healing all his wounds. He suddenly stands up, pressing his hand to his chest, stunned that he can speak again and that there are no bruises left. He does not have time to admire the potion and quickly returns to check C. C is unharmed, just unconscious. Yamamoto has the same symptoms that Yashio and others had earlier. He realizes that fate had saved him before. Lifting the lizard, he makes sure that the village of fate is real, not just a game, and thanks it for saving him. Then he remembered the village and panicked, checking his phone. Seeing that Yamamoto's troops are approaching the cave for the final attack, Hams tells everyone to enter the cave. Knowing that there are too many monsters on the palisade to fight them, he orders to seal the entrance to the cave after the monsters destroyed the fence and all the structures inside. They entered the cave and found that the passage was blocked by furniture, debris, and a cart. When the monsters storm the barricade, the villagers realize that it is only a matter of time before they break through and attack. Still, Judge Ken holds on to hope and does not give up. Pointing to the altar, someone says that they are still under the divine protection of the god of faith. Since the statue does not move, the group feels doomed and accepts that this may be their last moment. Jem regrets not keeping the vow to protect everyone. Innocent Carol, confused by his words, does not understand what is happening. After a brief glance at her mother, Muse takes a bottle from the bag and hands it to Carol. The explanation calms her. Without hesitation, Carol drinks the potion, feeling a sweet taste. She likes it, and soon she falls into a deep sleep. Layla lifts her, joyfully thanks the elf for this, and is comforted that her daughter will not have terrible thoughts. The others are silent and serious. Kem, looking at the altar, says that they can still save one person despite the difficult situation. Perhaps the word saving is not quite appropriate. She thinks it is better than dying there. She aloud considers whom to choose, and this confuses everyone. The priestess says that that day they had not yet offered a sacrifice to the god of fate, and suggests giving Carol to God as a tribute. The idea impresses the group. They doubt that it is even possible, and the knocking becomes louder. GAMM decides that there is no time for debate and agrees to try. He places the daughter on the altar, and Layla prays to the god of fate to protect her. Meanwhile, Kem apologizes for his failure, despite all the blessings received. Just as the girl begins to glow, Yashio calls Gal. The statue of the god of faith glows with a bright white light, and the villagers watch in amazement as it comes to life, and lifts Carol into his arms, reliving his victory. Yashio returns to help his people in a difficult moment. Joy spreads as the avatar of the god of faith appears, and after Gal hands Carol to her mother, he heads to the sealed entrance. Yashio knows that Yamamoto threw all his strength into this attack. The last of Yamamoto's troops near the cave give Yashio a chance to win if he defeats them all. He is ready to spend all his fate points on this and give everything he has. The hero pushes the cart forward with all his might, smashing the monsters blocking the tunnel. When it runs out into the open like lightning, then Gulm rushes forward and cuts through the horde of monsters with a storm of steel, clearing a path of destruction. Seeing that the tunnel is cleared, Hams calls the peasants to join their god in battle. Big Gown dodges the blow of the red cyclist. Lops, watching them, is more dangerous because when the black dog lunges at him, he quickly knocks it down. Noticing that the peasants have joined the fight, Yashio leaves the small monsters to the games and others. Instead, he targets 3 red cyclopes. Someone tries to smash the target with their mace, but Gown dodges and flips over the beast. The cyclops stabbed him with a sharp stake. A golem parries with a sword, retreating. Yashio knows that this will be a tough battle, so he decides to raise a cloud of dust by ordering the creature to strike the sword on the ground. The monster's gaze, switching to remote control, Yashio still tracks Gaon's position and orders him to slash. Cut the Cyclops' leg, knocked him down. The other wildly swings a mace. Distracts him with a thrown stone using a gong. The red Cyclops attacks again, but the target quickly dodges, and the monster accidentally hits one of its allies. Then the golem delivers a fatal blow to the Cyclops' neck, like in Attack on Titan. Having knocked down 2 monsters, Yashio turns his attention to the last one remaining. The red Cyclops rushes straight at the gong, but it dodges again and jumps up. Delivers a strong blade strike. The face of the monster and 2 having killed him. Yashio rejoices in this victory and calls on the peasants to give all their strength and make the final push, moving forward together. After a fierce battle, the peasants from Zelota Varda stood victorious on the field strewn with fallen small monsters, for they fought with all their might for survival. Other villagers come out of the cave and celebrate their success. Yashio hears a notification from Yamamoto's phone and picks it up. He sees a message that the game for Yamamoto is over, his player rights have been revoked, and the memories of the game will be erased. Yashio is stunned because no one said this could happen, although he was just saved by a magical lizard and brought back to life with a potion. Yashio can no longer consider this thought impossible, and he wonders if Yamamoto will also completely forget the events of that day. Yashio is deeply offended by the enemy threatening his villagers, especially after his terrible outburst earlier, but he believes that Yamamoto's wild behavior may be due to game, and he does not imagine that Yamamoto is truly angry or doing it intentionally. Yashio then lightly taps the unconscious Moto on the shoulder. He tells Yamamoto that it is already late when he wakes up and recognizes him. Yashio invents a story that Yamamoto fainted because he drank too much at a party with urine at his house. Confused, Yamamoto says that his head is empty and he remembers nothing. Although this could look suspicious if he were pretending, Yashio believes that the memory loss is real. The motorcyclist says he only remembers that that night some stranger came to his house and did something strange to him. Yamamoto says that the man hypnotized him and he fainted, and this does not match Yoshi's story about the party. At first, Yashio finds the idea of hypnosis incredible, but then he recalls Yamamoto's strange eyes and begins to think that someone might have controlled his friend to ruin the game. This idea is reinforced when Yamamoto worries that he might have behaved aggressively and Drunken offers to make amends. Yoshi's thoughts swirl, and he suspects that another player might be behind this, and that someone could have brought the game to such a level or even gained unique abilities from it. But it's all too much to figure out. Smiling, he tells Yamamoto that he supposedly has to return home after New Year's night due to some matters, and asks if it is convenient for him to stay longer. Yamamoto believed this, apologizes for the inconvenience, and goes home. Yashio wishes him a happy new year, and returns to see her begin to move. When C wakes up, she asks Eponik if he is okay and where Destiny is. Yashio calms her down, shows that he is fine, says that she dozed off when she came to him, and to avoid involving her in this mess, convinces her that it was just a bad dream. She agrees and says that it would not have been good for him if it had really happened, and thinks that Destiny was part of Dream too, not noticing that it is sitting on Yoshi's head.